Welcome. I'd like to call this meeting to order and begin by acknowledging the gratitude that we are gathered on the traditional and ancestral territories of the Squamish Nation. The relationship to this land and water surrounding the Bowen Island is ancient and enduring, and we honor their ongoing ownership. Welcome to the Bowen Island Municipality meeting of December 8th, 2025, and thank you for joining. I'm Andrew Leonard, the Mayor of Bowen Island Municipality and the chair of this meeting. I'd like to begin by introducing, as I always do, the other elected members of Bowen's Council here today. We'll be starting off on her lonesome here on my right. We have Councillor and Islands Trustee Judy Getty. To my far left, we have Councillor John Saunders. To his right is Councillor Tim Wake. And to his right is Councillor Alison Morse. Joining us online today, we also have Councillor and Islands Trustee Sue Ellen Fast. We're also joined by several members of our professional staff team here today, our Chief Administrative Officer, Kieran Dillon, our Corporate Officer, Sophie Insignia, as well as other members of staff will be presenting reports and information here this afternoon. This meeting is being recorded, and members of the public during the public comment and question and answer portion of the meeting. Your voice and presence will be included in the permanent recording, which will be available at bowenislandmunicipality.ca. And also on our YouTube channel, where it is currently live streaming to the masses and will be kept for posterity. This council meeting is an official forum for the conducting of the business of local government. We all love our community. We are all passionate about what happens here. I would encourage everyone to maintain a constructive and respectful tone during the meeting and to direct comments during the public comment and question and answer portion of the meeting to myself. For those following along either in person, online, or at a later date, the agenda and full council package, including all of the staff reports and information items, is available at bowenislandmunicipality.ca. And with that, I will turn to our agenda and begin by asking the corporate officer if we have any late items here today.
In the on-table items package today, we have just two items. That's a presentation prepared by the Hearts for this afternoon's delegation, as well as a letter from Andrew Stone regarding 1771 Arbutus Point Road.
With that, I will look for a motion to adopt the agenda and late items for today's meeting. Moved by Councillor Wake, seconded by Councillor Morse. Any discussion, changes, or amendments? Not seeing any, I'll call the question. All in favor, raise your hand, say aye.
Aye.
Aye, aye, and that carries unanimously. Moving on to public comments. I will look to our public comments today.
Just one today, and that is Peter Baseboard.
Mr. Baseboard, thank you for joining us today. If you want to join us up here at the front. You'll have 3 minutes to make your public comment. Time doesn't start until you're set and ready to go.
I'll take 5 minutes to pull my glass.
And our corporate officer will have it. It'll go off in about 15 seconds before the end.
Right. Good afternoon, Mayor Leonard and Council. I'm here today to speak to the Heritage Commission's submission addressing item 7.1 and answer any questions Council may have. We're recommending the Council consider deferring both of the recommendations in the staff report until more information is available on the merits of the LGA, the Local Government Act, Section 597 model. Until then, the recommendations are simply premature. Under LGA Section 597, Council would designate the functions of the Commission to an external organization. And we've been proactive in this regard. After engaging with BIPA, the Hearth, Museum of Archives, the consensus has been that the Commission partner with the Museum and Archives for this purpose. So what's the difference and why does it matter? Service agreement is a contract, but LGA Section 597 designates functions to an external body that are enshrined in the bylaw. When acting as a commission, the external body is the Commission. We believe this matters. 1, referrals on land use and specific development applications. 2, middle ground between external and internal, and an impartial advisory council as a formally designated body. 3, trusted, inclusive, non-aligned, able to bridge diversity in the heritage community. Note that both the transition options, either 597 or a service agreement, meet Council's streamlining goals. We proposed no additional cost or burden between the two options. In both cases, one, the external body performs all meeting and bid tasks previously done by committee support staff. Two, external body manages and documents appointments and recruitment. Three, all records will be found in the annual report. Basically, one-stop filing. Going forward, only one annual document for staff and council review and approve. So we're ready to help move this forward. The Commission is ready and able to assist staff obtaining relevant information by reaching out to similar municipalities, Heritage BC, and others for advice, best practice, including sample bylaws, procedures. In conclusion, we are recommending the council defer both recommendations in the staff report and direct staff and the Heritage Commission to receive more information on the merits and process of designating the Heritage Commission to existing organizations under Section 597 and report back by end of February 2026 on findings and recommendations for Heritage Commission transition. On the question of timing, on the question of timing, the funding model is not dependent on resolution of the transition model. Whether transition is through 597 or through a service agreement, the funding would be by a $2,000 annual addition to the Museum and Archives core funding to offset the cost of public heritage awareness and meeting administration. That process is moving forward. Happy to answer questions, and we have Museum and Archives Chair and Commission members also available in the gallery for questions. Thank you very much.
Any questions at this point? I know that we have this item later on our agenda. Mr. Would you be here for that?
I'll be coming back. Some of us will be coming back for that.
Any questions or comments?
I have one.
Yes, Councillor Fast.
Thank you. I'm wondering if the Heritage Commission has had a look at the amendments being proposed to the Provincial Heritage Conservation Act. This is the one that relates more to archaeology and First Nations, but it does say cultural heritage. And I'm just wondering if you've had a look at those
Yes.
proposed changes.
Yeah, yes, we have indeed. And one of the councillors actually specifically asked if we'd looked at that. It's very specific knowledge base, especially in terms of Indigenous archaeology. But we can see why there'd be concerns in terms of impact on council, in terms of workload and responsibilities and that kind of thing as well.
Thank you.
Councillor Morse.
So a follow-up on that, thanks for the presentation, Peter. There's no implications of the proposals to what you're proposing.
From the changes to the Heritage Conservation Act, no.
Thank you.
Not seeing any further questions. Thank you.
Thank you.
Turning back to our agenda, we have two delegations here today. 3.1, Samantha Brett, Hearth Arts on Bowen regarding update to council.
Hi. I'm going to ask Gail Wattenberg to join me just simply because this is my first presentation to council, and she may have something to add that will be of value. So nice to meet all of you that I haven't had an opportunity to meet in person yet. I'll look forward to a chance to chat. In terms of the information that I submitted, so everybody will have it. I don't need to read it verbatim, correct? Fantastic. So let's just start with the fact that this is a new position. And again, I've been in it for about 4 months, since August 1st. Really enjoying it so far. I think that the first 4 months has really just been about getting to know all the stakeholders on the island that are associated with the arts, the different arts organizations here, as well as within Hearth Arts itself. And of course, at the municipality, I've gotten to know a lot of the staff here, and I've had a great experience with that. As you're all aware, my position as programming and production manager for the theater means that I'm kind of picking up the reins from the Performing Arts Committee to help produce the shows that we're putting on in the theater. So as far as the Hearth Presents series goes, which is what I've come on board to deliver, we've had our first 2 shows of the season, which by all accounts, I think have been quite successful. Ballet BC Annex was sold out and could have sold out multiple times. I don't know how many folks here were able to attend. And we just recently had the Marianne Shadow Quartet show. We had 85 guests, but they were extremely enthusiastic. It was a great show. Sadly, we were competing against the Madrigal Singers that night. Otherwise, I would have liked to have seen them, and I'm sure some of the folks that were there might have come over. So again, focusing on delivering this program. Again, we're kind of starting from scratch. This is a brand new theater. So even though it opened up earlier in the season in April, and some of the local organizations like Toady and King Baby and the Movie Society have had a chance to use the space, we're really getting a good feel for it for productions. So that is everything from technical to volunteers to concessions. So I'm in the process of building out a lot of policies and procedures right now with the assistance of the Hearth and the staff on the board. I'd like to talk a little bit about the programming we've got moving forward. So as of about the 15th, we're just deep in the marketing work right now. We should be launching the rest of the season. So you'll see here, great, fantastic. So our next presentation is on February 7th. The island seems to have a really great appetite for contemporary dance, which is super cool. So we've got contemporary dance coming back with Action at a Distance presenting Whale. Very exciting. They're presenting here first before they present at the Push Festival. So the caliber of performer that we're bringing to the island through the Hearth Presents program, which of course, for those of you that aren't aware, has grants associated with it to be able to bring these performers to the island. So far, so good. Then we move on with Jeremy Fisher. He's an amazing kids performer. He's doing a matinee that day. We've got such a large kids population on the island, so we think that that will be an extremely popular show. And then we move on to May. We've got Sarah Hagan, who's an incredibly talented pianist, certainly renowned across Canada. She's presenting, again, an all ages friendly, family friendly show. There's more I'd like to be able to say, but we're right in the process of signing contracts. So these are the ones that contracts have signed and I can speak to right now. Another thing that we want to focus on is Bowen Island artists. So just want to assure everybody that's here today that that is a real focus for us. In fact, we're meeting, I did not have the pleasure of experiencing endangered species, but we have a meeting later this week to talk about maybe bringing that program back. We're also talking about doing a program of musical showcases for both emerging and established artists. So despite the fact that Hearth Arts undertakes grant work for Hearth Presents so that we can bring folks like the 3 acts we've just discussed to the island, we are also very much focused on how to support and promote and feature artists right here, artists right here. So there's that. Any questions about any of that so far? Nope. What I'll continue on to talk about a little bit here is the money. So we will get into that in a bigger way here as we enter the second quarter, as we've just started the second quarter of the year. So the goal is to combine subsidized programming, so subsidized through the grant work that is being very effectively done by our board members and our staff members at the Hearth, with really, I say, carefully curated artist partnerships to generate moderate net revenue. Ultimately, the goal of this whole exercise of me being here with you is to not only support fantastic programming, both from on and off island, but it's also to try and make this as financially successful as possible. So I think that, you know, it's too soon to make any assumptions, but the goal that we're really going for here is that the subsidized performers that come on, they may be, you know, they may be a little bit more avant-garde. They may be some great stuff to see. They may not have quite the following as some of our co-presents artists will have. So right now, the curation of this program is really important to ensure that, you know, one show will make revenue, one show might break even. If one show falls under, we should be able to balance it out through the course of the performance season. So the goal here is year one, we're learning and building, but we do have a goal of moderate net revenue. So that we can actually start doing some financial planning around the theater and the programs. So that's kind of where we're at in a nutshell to start. I'm happy to address any other questions. Please, if I've missed anything. Yeah, at all, let me know. I'm just conscious, this is my first appearance, so I want to make sure I'm giving you all the info you need.
Of course.
Thanks for the presentation. I've always won on statistics and numbers. How many performances have happened in the theater?
I will be able to report next, because I wasn't involved, because the theater opened in April and I didn't join until August. And I think that probably Sienna is who the person I'll go back to for that, because she will be aggregating numbers based on the contracts for all of the different organizations that are coming in. So if we want to take into consideration, Toady, King Baby, and all of those things, I'll go back to her and we'll start aggregating together numbers for you.
And then one other sort of follow for ticket sales. Does Viac get some of the ticket sales money because it's a Viac production, or is it all the ticket sales revenue goes to the presenter and all we get is rent revenue?
That's about right. I mean, basically right now you're getting rent revenue. With the grants that are currently in place now that we hope, I'm sure, to continue into the future. For the Hearth Presents series, we have grants that will pay up to 50% of $2,500 of performance fee. So, that's what we're getting for an offset for those performances. Then when we do a co-presents, say, for example, we bring someone from off the island, we're basically splitting ticket revenue with them. So again, you're getting the rental revenue for the theater after we've paid expenses associated with the performance, technical staff, et cetera, et cetera. We typically are going to split the ticket revenue with the artist that we're presenting. Ultimately, though, it's about having a fantastic program that isn't a huge financial burden. So that's what we're building towards. And I think what we're finding is even just with the first two performances, we're starting to galvanize a little bit as a community. I've gotten wonderful feedback from folks who've been at both performances, just saying how amazing is it that we've got this kind of stuff happening on the island. So I do think it will end up being a popular program, which of course can only help us financially. I will say that Sienna, who, for those of you that aren't aware, works here in the municipality with REC. She reported our last community center joint management committee that right now about 58% of the available time in the theater has been booked. So that is really cool. I mean, we're obviously way under a year in right now with it opening in April. So if 58% of the available space is taken, then great. We're just we're learning as we go. But clearly demand is there.
I wanted to clarify one thing, that in addition to these programs that she, thank you, Sam, a lot, that we've been delivering of these different concerts or specific shows. The things she stated fairly quickly were things like developing a volunteer base, developing a concession rollout, a system, or operationalizing concession rollout, and operationalizing a technical team that is available to work the very sophisticated audio and video lighting equipment that we have in that theater. That's not for Hearth Present shows. That's for any show and all shows. So it's about trying to create a bit of an interface to the public for user groups of all kinds. I just want to make sure that that's clear.
And thank you. And again, this is why I've asked you to sit here so that I don't miss anything. So for example, on the technical side of things, you've built this beautiful theater. However, there's still a real learning curve for folks. And we want to make sure that we're working with folks right here on the island that have the skills, develop the skill base for people here to be coming and supporting the shows that are here. We can always make a call and bring somebody from Vancouver, but that's not the goal. So the technical committee, which is sort of an offshoot of the Performing Arts Committee, but also has Doug and Lee from the municipality sit on that committee. So up until this point, they were about purchasing. So as you know, there had been a seat sale for the names on the seats. The revenue for that is now being spent on equipment that lives at the theater, that belongs to the theater. So that's additional sound and lighting equipment. So this technical group has determined what is required. The next step that they're assisting us with is, and Lee has been very kind in giving us the basics that he provides to a renter. But what our Hearth Technical Committee is doing is actually taking it to the next level, which is how do you set presets on lighting and sound? How do you making user manuals to make it easier for all users to be able to be in the theater and have a great show. So what we're finding is the Hearth and the various Hearth committees and board members are kind of bridging the gap with the municipalities skill set and staffing. You've got wonderful staff here and they're really dedicated, but I mean, there's never enough time and never enough human power. And so we're kind of coming in to backfill and level up on the things that need to be done technically in the space. Same goes for concessions. Anything we have for concessions here, we're happy to lend to anybody else who uses the theater. So whether that be signage or, you know, any of those items that you need to run a successful concession, if we've got them, we'll share them with everybody who's using the concession. Anything else I've missed there?
One other interface would be that we're recording a welcome to the theater. So a land acknowledgement, who the funders are, that sort of thing will be available to any group that presents in the theater. If they don't have someone that they want to designate to do a verbal welcome and a land acknowledgement, it's pre-recorded and their technician could play it. So I'm just trying to go through a list of those kinds of things that we're trying to develop that will be available for any user.
Yeah, and there's a lot of incremental small things like this. And certainly at some point, council can let us know how into the nitty gritty you'd like us to be. I'm always happy to answer questions after the fact and submit specifics. But for example, Ryan Hoschild sits on the technical committee. Jamie Nesbitt will be going over to his recording studio to record these. Gratis, of course, all as part of the support for the theater to make sure that we're kind of covering all the bases for everybody who uses it.
Councilor Katie.
So thank you for your presentation. It's always good to get the enthusiasm in terms of all the things that are happening with, so the parts presents and, you know, all of that, bringing in outside talent and all the rest of it, and all of how successful that program has been. I haven't got to many of them, but I hear a lot of talk too in terms of how well received that is. I think that ultimately, if I put my counselor hat on instead of my cheerleader hat for the arts, we're going to have to do at some point, some digging into the numbers in terms of it's, you know, fairly substantial commitment that we've made in terms of taxpayer money to make sure that this is successful. But I think somehow or other, we're going to have to work out what's public in terms of the funding that the Hearth gets for all of this, and whether or not we can think about the future in terms of whether or not how likely it's going to be that the support funding from the municipality is going to be necessary. So if we're up to 58% in terms of the use of the space, and we're trying to get something more, whatever that number might be, what's that going to take in terms of effort? How much is going to be the responsibility of recreation? How much from the Hearth? How much from, and I suppose in addition, what the Joint Management Committee should be taking on in terms of helping and understanding both what we're going to need from the techies, what we're going to need from production, what we're going to need from all of the concession. That's also turning out to be a different, not a difficult one, but a big one in terms of the number of people that are required, and that the kids do it and supervise these kind of stuff.
Yeah, and to your point, yes, I completely agree. We want to get into the money. That's really my background too, is the operational side of managing artistic programs and artistic organizations is the money has to line up. At the same time, I do sit on the Joint Management Committee with the community, and I'm on a subcommittee right now where we're working on the nitty gritty of the policy, the rental policy with them, pricing, usage. So we're still really very much in that discovery phase, but don't think for a second we're not looking at the bottom line constantly with it. So we also want to be able to balance, here, an example with concession. I'd love to build out multiple organizations in town that can run concessions, and IDLC has put their hand up. They ran concessions for Toady. So long as there's some money in it for the local nonprofits, they are happy to come in. I've been having conversations with multiple nonprofits on the island. So whether it's the Hearth or somebody else, we'd love for anyone who comes in the theater to be able to turnkey in a successful concession partner that's a nonprofit that hopefully is going to make some revenue for their organization from this effort. And that's something that I'm spearheading as sort of central figure in order to support it, potentially staff it, supply it, and make sure that it runs smoothly for the community. So I think as we get into this, we've just started the second quarter of this contract, and bottom line dollars are a huge focus for us now.
And then again, I'm not sure whose jurisdiction it might be, but in terms of potential philanthropy or sponsorship. In terms of both public art productions, basic functioning, I know that has been something that you've been very successful with in your previous work. So if we can get into, and I heard a presentation from Ice-T in terms of their philanthropic donations there. I think this year they were talking about 26 million in terms of what they're bringing in. So there's potential out there, but I also see some potential conflict, and it's something that we need to work out, so that if it's, the independent production companies, or if it's the Hearth, or if it's the Joint Management Committee, or who's going to be getting the most benefit, and we're not stepping over each other.
Yeah, I think that that's a great point. I can't speak to it in too great of detail, but the Hearth Arts is mounting through the board, and James Nesbitt would be better to speak to this, a fundraising campaign. And there'll be some branding changes coming up in the new year. So we should be hearing more about that as soon as January. So meetings are happening. I have offered to be part of those meetings because, to your point, I have a deep background in philanthropy, and know some folks that might want to support some of the programming we've got going on here. So that's something I will probably be involved in the new year based on my conversations with James. Yeah, so absolutely. Fundraising is crucially important. I will say that there's still a lot of seats in there that don't have names on them. We see that. So thought process is, could we come together with the local theater companies on the island and put together something to sell the rest of those seats and use the revenue jointly to, again, support the theater and everything, the things we all need when we're using the theater, because a lot of the technical stuff we have in common.
Just, can you remind me the difference between Hearth Presents and Hearth Co-Presents?
Yeah, so the Hearth Presents series grants. So Gail, and do you want to speak to this at all, or do you want me to just sort of keep going?
I can be very specific about it if that's helpful. So the Hearth Presents series means that we are applying for funding from Canada and from British Columbia to pay artists a portion of their artist fee and some support around that production. And it is a guaranteed fee engagement. It only applies to touring artists. In other words, it can't be paid to a Bowen resident.
Right.
Because that's not, if they're off island, then they would be touring somewhere else and would be eligible as an artist, but not if they're performing here. So I oversee a lot of that grant writing. And that is for a guaranteed fee engagement. We sign a contract for exactly how much they're going to get paid. A co-presentation is a little different in that we cover the same types of things. We cover the theater rental. We cover the technicians being on site. We cover the promotions. And I could list a few other things, but you can kind of imagine what might be in a budget. But then how the artist gets paid is where it really differentiates. Once hard costs are covered, we then take the profit and we split it, some proportion or agreed upon in the contract, we agree upon a split. And the Hearth will take a portion and the artist takes the portion. That they are coming without a guaranteed fee. And there's a lot of reluctance, as you can imagine, for established artists, because they're like, well, I want a guaranteed fee or it's not worth my time. But for more emerging touring artists, it might be a really nice platform for them to start to develop an audience here.
Yeah, and I'll give you an example of that too. So we've been in touch with the group that runs the Underground Comedy Club in Vancouver, and they're really interested in bringing a comedy show over here, which we think potentially could be really great a few times a year. So we're in conversation with them, and they're willing to take that chance and see what happens. For sure, we'll come over for the day. We're from Vancouver. We'll bring out 3 comedians. We'll do the show, and they're willing to just sort of see how it works out financially. That's really, and there's the commitment. And the other thing, that just a reminder that the Hearth is doing, and it's important to note that it's part of our job, is to promote all arts and arts adjacent programming at the theater, whether the Hearth is involved or not. So what that means is that we market it, we produce posters, we do social media posts, we do
We house
newspaper
the web-
advertising. Yeah, and that is just our commitment as the arts organization here on the island. For anybody on or off island that comes, we want to make sure that the theater is full for all of these performances. So it's a really, you know, if you go to, you rent the K-Meek to do a show, they don't do any promotion for you. In fact, you're excluded from their programming. Very different than what we're doing on Bowen Island, which is what makes it exciting, which is if you bring a show here, we're going to absolutely promote it for you. There's no charge to you for all of these wonderful professional marketing and promotional pieces that we produce.
Right. Yeah, and I think that's important, and you know, I think that speaks to just the structure of the Hearth as an arts council versus just a straight up theater like Jamie. And really appreciate the presentation. I love some of the anchor events that I'm seeing here for 2026. The only note of feedback that I might have is that what feels a little lost in the mix for me is speaking to the local program. So I think when just in conversations about the Arts Council in general and its role on the island, and even in funding in this role, when I look at the job description, part of the key responsibility is collaborating with local island groups, right? So I understand there's probably lead time and you need to get these sort of anchor events in, but I would love next quarter to see a reporting back just on that local engagement and how we're promoting local artists, because Bowen, you know, the reason why the Arts Council is so strong is that we've got such a strong local art here on the island, and I'd like to ensure that that's not getting lost in the mix. So when I see some of the splashy pieces, when I hear some of the notes that start to feel a little bit out of scope, even in terms of revenue development, fund development, concessions that weren't, I think, as contemplated in the original agreement. I really want to make sure that we're grounding this in local community, and that the local community is being drawn in by the Arts Council to use the theater, whether it's as you mentioned, not just performing arts, but you know, we're showcasing visual arts, the fiber arts, the community theater, all of those pieces, which really provided the impetus to have this facility built. So that's what I'd like to see. And then I think some of the other pieces, the other quieter notes that I've heard sort of around the table so far are just in relation to our role as council. So we're really, you know, the dollar and cents body of the public trust. So what I'd love to see in the next quarterly report is some of those comparative numbers. So, you know, how many shows happened, like what were the budgets, what grants were applied for, what is the sustainability of this position, which I think is part of what's in the agreement. And I would love to hear more reporting on those success stories that happened, as well as the success stories that are coming up in a way that we can quantify them. And as an entity, we can go with the community and share those successes and share those impacts as well.
Yes, thank you for that feedback.
Councilor Wade.
Thanks for the presentation. Exciting. One sort of specific question, and this is more as a user than a member of council. Ticket sales. And just in terms of kind of a seamless promotion. Like right now, we have to go to different places to get the tickets. And is there going to be sort of one, like no matter what I'm going to see at the theater, the ticket process is similar, or there's only a couple?
Well, we use Eventbrite for Hearth Presents, and my understanding is Tony uses Eventbrite as well. So I'm not sure what else is happening at the theater. Are you referring specifically to film or something like that? Is it?
Well, that's one.
That's one of them. So right now, ticketing platforms, without going into too much boring detail for you, ticketing platforms are complicated to use and expensive to contract. So that's why solutions like Eventbrite exist. So we pay a user fee to set up on Eventbrite, but anybody can use it, and it's probably the best way to sort of promote and easily sell tickets. So that's what we do. That's what Toady does. I can't speak to what the other local organizations are doing. Maybe they're trying to save, there is a user fee to use those platforms. So maybe they're trying to avoid the user fee. So we don't have a plan right now to centralize a ticketing platform, just simply because budget and human resource constraints are are too great. We're happy to share knowledge with the other organizations about what kind of works and what doesn't. So at this point, something else I will point out too, so no, is the short answer to that is we don't have a plan to kind of wrap our arms around and centralize it. Something I will point out to you though, I think I can safely announce we've got a kind of a larger artist coming in September of 2026, which we're very excited about. We are keeping ticket prices very low, you'll note. So ticket prices right now are $35 for general admission. I have a $50 patron ticket that we've tried. A couple of people have bought it, which is great. That's a $50 ticket because the difference goes into a donation, which is wonderful. And we're typically doing a $20 or $25 youth or kids ticket, right? For a show like the one that's coming up in the fall, and I can't use the name because we haven't contracted just yet, although it has been agreed to. We know that if we put it out on Eventbrite, all those tickets will get sold on the Lower Mainland, and that ferry will be full of people coming over to see this artist. So in that case, we're going to pre-launch ticket sales on the island, and we probably will have to have people go down to the gallery to buy them. Because if I put them on Eventbrite, there's no way for me to stop people outside of the Bowen community from getting them. And we really want the Bowen community to enjoy an artist of this caliber at a reasonable ticket price. So we're working on a way to kind of pre-sell to Bowen residents only, and that probably will necessitate going to the gallery. Sorry. But that's a great way to make sure that everybody here on the island gets to see a great show.
That's great. It's well worth it.
It's nice to hear that Springsteen's coming too.
That's great. Never say never. Bowen's a lovely place to visit, and it's a gorgeous new theater.
I just wanted to follow up, if it's okay, to your question, Councilor Wake. I too feel like it's nice to be able to go to one place. And so though we cannot do it through a centralized ticketing system at this point in the development of the theater, what we have done is made sure that everybody gives us their ticketing information and how it's laid out in the promo on the Hearth website. When you go to the Bowen Theater, every one of them looks the same. This is what you will see. And at the bottom, it will say, buy tickets, and you push that button and it will direct you to various locations. And you're right about that, but at least we tried to standardize that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, not seeing any further questions or comments. Thank you so much for being here today.
And thank you very much for supporting the Bowen Island Arts Council and being able to hire this very, very capable person. It's been a real gift, I think, to the organization, to the community, and to theater users.
Yeah, thank you. It's been really exciting to be part of it. And it's really fun building something like this here in this community. So thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you. Next up, 3.2, Bowen Island Resilient Community Housing regarding Lot 1 pre-developed budget and deliverables.
I share?
Not yet.
So. It's trying to go into full screen. Yeah, that's weird. Every time I go to full screen, it seems to kick in. Okay. Well, we won't do full screen. But apologies, right? Okay, there we go. Just leave. We'll see my Adobe. There we go. Oops. Oh. Nice to see you all. This is a very exciting time. It's been a long time coming, and nice to see you be back here speaking to you once again. So today is about the Lot 1 pre-development plan that we presented on earlier in the year. As a reminder, let me go through my slides. I do that. I talk ahead and then I realize I've actually planned slides. So
Can I just ask a question?
yes,
I can't see who is presenting. Is that you, Robin?
it's me, Robin. Yes, I'll introduce myself.
I just see you on Zoom as well, so I was wondering. Thank you very much.
Okay. I am Robin Fenton. I'm the Executive Director of Birch. Joining me from Birch is Nigel Malkin, our Housing and Development Manager, and David McCollum, our Board Chair. And then on the line we have, and then she's just turned on her video, joining us for the Lot 1 development project is New Commons Development as our development consultant partner. So Ting Yang is on the line, I think Aisha as well. So if do you want to unmute Ting Yang and you can just introduce yourself and New Commons?
Thanks, Robin. I'm Ting Yan, and joining us is Aisha, our development manager on the project. We are from New Commons Development, and we're nonprofit developers that works with nonprofits, co-ops, and community groups that has passion in building and preserving affordable housing. And yeah, we're excited to support Birch on this project and also deliver affordable housing for the Bowen Island community. Thanks, Robin.
Thank you. So as a very high level reminder, I'll probably go through this very quickly because I anticipate more questions, but just as a high level reminder, the community lands Lot 1, which is over between the school and the works yard. In 2023, council endorsed a work plan through the Housing Advisory Committee for Birch and Tomo Spaces as community volunteers to work on an implementation plan, which we did through 2024. That was presented earlier this year. And at that time, council sort of approved in principle to move forward with a detailed work plan budget. And also parallel to that, as you know, council also approved 3 years of operating funds for Birch, which we are half a year, but technically 1 year into, which is exciting. So, and those funds came from the Housing Accelerator Fund, which was the purpose is to assist with affordable housing on the island. I included this just in case there was anything to come back to, but that was from the Tomo report. And a very quick operational update. As I mentioned, we have operational funds. We've scaled up. We now have 3 part-time staff members. We're providing municipal support, including referrals on rezoning applications. And we're working with an additional consultant group, Vantage Point, on strengthening our board's governance and our organizational policies. So those are all happening in parallel, making sure we build this organization along with these development projects. So the next steps, and that's the report, I believe that's in front of you. What we're planning to build on from the report we did with Tomo Spaces and Birch last year is to move into a more detailed plan for the site. So the goal being to complete essential deliverables to prepare Area 1 for community housing development. So detailed site planning, market analysis, and financial modeling. Site due diligence, a couple of which are in progress already for us to get a start on: the environmental site assessment, a biological assessment, survey, geotechnical investigation. The market study, we realized there's a lot happening on Bowen in housing right now. There's the Lookout Birch project, that's 24 units. That should be under construction early in the year. You know, ballpark within 2 years, they'll be open. Snug Hope House, which is also, I think, in the next 18 months. I believe that's in that 20 to 24 units. I know it's different demographic and market, but still. And then, am I forgetting something off the top of my head? No. Anyways, we want to make sure that what we're going to aim to build first on the Area 1 of Lot 1 is a good match for the market. We don't want to inundate with the same product, essentially. Sorry, product housing. But we want to make sure that it's complementary and we're providing that diverse housing, because that's one of our most important aspects. We want to provide diverse housing options. So we want to do a market study, which would be mostly led by Birch, but we'll likely bring in an outside consultant to make sure we're doing everything properly and that it's useful information. Why we propose to do most of ourselves. Anytime we've talked to outside consultants about the actual housing market, rent levels and everything on Bowen, they're all mystified. You know, they look at West Van, they look at Sunshine Coast. So we think we probably have more experience on the ground, and we're actually actively doing research on Facebook and other places. But we definitely want to work with that professional to make sure it's the proper information that we can rely on to be able to move forward with plans, funding, all of those types of things. And then, so strategic planning, we've got on the slide there to make sure we're planning it the right way and phasing it. Was one of the things we've learned with the Lookout development, and Nigel and I were at a large Housing Central conference a couple weeks back, was to make sure that the plans that we make are feasible and realistic for Birch to achieve, given our capacity, given what we've got in front of us. So, for example, jumping into build, not that we're proposing this, a 40-unit apartment building probably isn't the best first step. So we want to make sure that what we're proposing in the first phases are realistic for Bowen. Bowen needs them. Our organization can handle it. We're going to be ready for that capacity for it. So that's a really important part of this as well. Site and infrastructure planning, the boring stuff, but the very, very important stuff is figuring out civil engineering, how the utilities are going to work. We've been advised to definitely consider electrical needs early on. So we're going to engage with that. And then work with the planning department on identifying how we might go about subdividing that land in order to phase the development. And then, as I sort of hinted at already, the financial feasibility. So figuring out what we want to build, how much it's going to cost, where does the funding come from, all of those kinds of things. We do have a budget breakdown. Most of these numbers are backed up by at least 2 or 3 quotes, which our colleagues from New Commons worked on. A couple of them are placeholders. We weren't able to get that in time to submit this. But the plan is for the architects for the designs, the development consultants, a number of engineers, as you can see, surveyors, wastewater consultant, again, not very glamorous, but critical to understand that's probably going to be the biggest limiting factor of the site to make sure we can handle the wastewater on site. And I think the rest is fairly self-explanatory. We have included contingency because, life happens. And the totals come to 150. There we go, nice little placeholder. So, our goal is advance the planning on lot 1, taking a step forward to provide diverse affordable housing options for Bowen. I will wrap it up and see if there is any questions.
We were looking at lot 1 in that exact same location for the fire hall. So I have right here with me a geotechnical report from GBH Consulting Limited that was done on the plan, and also a
Fantastic.
So I'm curious if you didn't know about those beforehand. So I do know GBH is one of the groups you consulted with, but they've already done the work.
I'll check in with the planning department and we'll make sure we have any of that historical information.
And so there's quite a few comments. And then this is a report we did in fire hall, which details more of the information on test holes and costs for soil excavation and all that sort of stuff. So I scanned that and sent it to Daniel this morning. So.
Great, thank you very much.
Thank you, Councilor Morris. Councilor Mick.
Thanks for the presentation and thank you for everything Birch has done without very much funding for all these years. And it's great to see that, you're now becoming a professional rather than a volunteer organization. And all this planning really looks great. I'm excited about lot 1, but it is daunting, and I'm a bit concerned about the timeline. I'm wondering if there's anything at this stage that the municipality can do to help speed things up, if you see any barriers. And one that occurs to me is just reading through the lease process for lot 3, and having to redo it, and then looking at what in the end came out, which is a document which doesn't seem to reflect in any way, a partnership between a nonprofit and a municipality. It's like we're both poised to sue each other, and this is going to prevent it, or give the lawyers more arguments on both sides. So anyway, if there's anything we can do, love to hear about it.
Thank you. And yes, lots of lessons learned from that project on the lease. So we're hoping to, head that off early on.
Can you remind me how we ended up with this area of lot 1 versus, I think it was area, was up in Hillmore?
Yeah, area 2, which is next to Belterra. So this was part of the report and the work that we did with Tomo Spaces, and we looked at each of them. And it was identified this one is definitely more easily developed. It's going to be more cost effective and easier to develop first. Area 2 is just a lot more harder for access. The road up to it, I think Carter Road would have to have a fairly major overhaul. And for given, I think it's only zoned or approved for like 20 units at the moment. So to do all of that work to build the 20 units and ALR setbacks, it has a lot going on that little lot, and it's quite sloped. Whereas area 1 was identified to be of all of the spaces that it was the easiest.
And the, never mind, it's gone right on.
Councillor Getty, followed by
Oh, I
Councillor.
know.
Councillor Morris, followed by Councillor
50
Getty. followed by
units or
Councillor
100?
Pardon?
Is it 50 units or 100 units?
It's a range at this moment. And like I said, wastewater is management and wastewater system is probably going to be the biggest determination. So I think it'll be closer to 50 than 100, but it's still a bit of
The
a.
draft agreement to lease says 50 units, so it might be better if it said up to between 50 and 100 or something.
Yeah, or we could say up to 100 to leave it open. Yep. Okay. Yep. It's good feedback.
Councillor Getty.
I'm more interested in, I guess I'm wondering if this is some sort of a phased development. So I'm more interested in the capacity of the water in and the water out. It seems to me that it all part of one of those viable.
Yes.
So some of these engineering consultants, can we get those questions sorted out early before we?
Yes. So we definitely have.
All the other expenses.
We definitely have the wastewater management, so the septic system is in there because we know that's going to be a critical one. The water we've left as we don't have a consultant per se, and we know that that's going to be an ongoing discussion with the municipality and maybe the infrastructure committee or the engineering department. So we are aware that it's not just a easy slam dunk that water will necessarily be there, but we're optimistic that we can all work together. Yeah.
Over to you, Councillor Jurgensen.
First of all, thank you so much for all the work that Birch has done so far. My question with the timeline is similar to Councillor Wake. I'm just wondering if there's anything that can be done to speed it up. But kind of my thought on that is obviously there's a rezoning before us for this lot. And wondering if there's efficiencies that we can use to kind of speed that process along.
Thank you. Yeah, that's a great question. Currently, we are planning to stay within the existing zone because quite a lot was done a number of years ago. We don't see any reason that we need to go beyond that. So that's a really great thing. The subdivision will have to happen and hopefully we'll have, municipal support for that. I think it's addressed in the agreement to lease. So that's definitely something I guess council and or staff can help us with prioritizing that to move it along. Really the funding's the biggest help. And in terms of timeline, we're hoping to finish this in the first 3 or 4 months of the new year. We'll be coming back before I think the end of April to do our sort of first annual presentation. So we'll update you at that time where we're up to and what the next steps are. I'm just trying to think, Nigel, or maybe Ting Yang or Aisha, can you think of anything that the municipality in this sort of next steps could specifically help with? I think it's pretty much just us and a bunch of consultants. Is there anything you can think of?
Yeah.
$7 million.
That would be great. But yeah, I thanks, Robin. I think you pretty much captured it. And yeah, I think our main asks, if you will, or requests were the pre-development budget to enable us to do this work, and then anything related to the lease as you touched on, and the subdivision as well. Yeah.
Thank you.
Over to Councillor Summers.
Thank you, through the chair. Thanks for the presentation. Just wondering your timeline there, first 4 months to get this amount of work done. Are those time constraints self-imposed or grants reliant on you getting things done in a certain amount of time?
It's a mix of both. We were initially aiming for like March 31st, that financial year end for the government. So often, things are replenished, grant funds are replenished in sort of April. So we have been aiming to try to meet that, but we also kind of took a pause and realized realistically, we likely weren't going to get the amount of work done we'd hoped by March 31st to have sort of an application together. So we're hoping to still achieve quite a bit. And then at least in April, we'll start to begin some conversations. We may not have a full robust application package, but to at least sort of get in front of some people, get us sort of on a list so they're aware of happening. So it's definitely a combination of both, but mostly self-imposed.
Just not really follow up, separate question, just, and this isn't a question, it's more a comment. I recognize that this is a very high budget, 12,000 for this 12. I would suggest that a 9% contingency that you have there is going to be really low.
Okay.
I've never come across that low contingency that, but in any event, that you guys are working your budget, so that was just a comment.
Thank you. And like I say, several of them, not every single engineer, we actually do have quotes. So we feel fairly confident in a bunch of them that we have fairly accurate numbers.
Okay, not seeing any further questions or comments. Thanks for your work on this, your continued work on this, and
Thank you so much.
thank you.
Thank you so much.
On section 4 of the agenda, the consent agenda, I will look to councilors for any items you would like to pull from the consent agenda. Councilor Getty. 4.4. 4.
4.3. 4.3 is also.
4. 4.3 is minutes of the public hearing. 4 is minutes of the regular council meeting.
Can I,
Yes,
Sorry.
Councilor.
I couldn't hear which ones were pulled.
I've heard 4.3 and 4.2.
4.3 and 4.
No, I couldn't, I'm with clarifying.
Oh, just clarifying, okay. So just 4.4, Councilor Pest.
Okay, then can I pull 4.3?
No.
The hokey cokey, you put it in.
No.
Any other item to pull from the consent agenda? Not seeing any, can I have a motion to adopt the consent agenda, please? Moved by Councilor Getty, seconded by Councilor Saunders. Any further discussion? Not seeing any. I'll call the question. All in favor, raise your hand and say aye.
Aye.
And that carries unanimously. Moving on to items pulled from the consent agenda, we have 4.3 minutes of the public hearing held November 24th, 2025. Over to you, Councilor Fast.
Yeah, I just wanted to, I just wanted to mention that there was a phone call that we received in one of the public hearings. And that was regarding 1360 Mount Gardner Road. And I flagged this with staff, but I think there's that phone call is missing from Victoria in opposition to the proposal. So I believe staff are fixing that in the record. Is that correct?
Yep, I'll call our manager of planning and development there. You get them under the microphones.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Councillor Fast. Yes, it's the staff report on that rezoning. I failed to include that comment, but it is captured in the public hearing minutes itself. It's just the staff report does not include that reference.
Okay, thank you very much. I had my papers confused. My apologies, but thank you very much for fixing that.
That I'll look for a motion to receive.
I so move.
By Councilor Fast, seconded by Councilor Getty. All in favor, raise your hand, say aye.
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 Carries unanimously. Over to you, Councilor Getty, for 4.4 minutes of the regular council meeting held November 24th, 2025.
Okay, on the last page of those minutes, 6 of 6, I'm reporting on the trust council. And I'm reporting that the CEO's operation report had just been received, and highlighting that it includes 2 costly budget recommendations and new funding not previously reviewed by the finance committee. And I say that, or I'm quoted in this minutes as saying that these changes affect general operations, but not Bowen Island. I don't remember saying that, and if I did say it, I was wrong, because general operations are part of our equation. So I just wanted to, I thought it was important to change the actual factory. These changes affect general operations, including O&M.
I think that is a move to amend the minutes by Councilor Getty. Is there a seconder for that? Moved by Councilor, seconded by Councilor Saunders. Any discussion? Not seeing any. Call the question on the amendment. All in favor, raise your hand, say aye.
Aye.
Okay. And can I have a motion
Aye.
to adopt minutes as amended. Moved by Councilor Getty, seconded by Councilor Wake. All in favor, raise your hand, say aye.
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 And that carries unanimously. Okay, we are out of the consent agenda, moving on to section 6, business arising from minutes, 6.1, consideration of an application for development variance permit at 1771 Arbutus Point Road. And Percy's out, one joining us here today for a short presentation.
Hi, thank you, Mayor Schultz. Just gonna discuss the application for variance for 1771 RBS Point Road. Pressure, so the development variance permit is for a retaining wall and stairway, where the retaining wall is 1.16 meters. It was from a site visit from the building inspector in March 2025 that it was noted that the retaining wall was over the 0.6 meter in height. Right. Notifications were sent out to neighboring properties on October 31st and November 28th, as well as signs were posted on the property. One response was received in opposition as of today. Noted the background on the site as provided by the applicant. The staircase was built in early 2024 to provide a wooden staircase that was providing access to the ocean. Yeah, in this slide you can see where the retaining wall and staircase are in relation to the rest of the site. Here you can see some photos from September from a site visit. Some photos from the applicant themselves. As part of their application, they submitted a condition impact assessment. The condition impact assessment included a restoration plan that calls for planting of native plants and as well as removal of the Scotch broom. Staff have also added a security deposit of $500 to the draft DVP to ensure compliance. And just in conclusion, staff recommend that the DVP 2025-0143 be issued for the variance of the maximum height of the retaining wall.
Put that back up so you can go back to the picture. I guess my question is, it's only the height of the wall that's triggered that there's some infrastructures within setbacks or anything?
We allow staircases to be at a height of up to 2 meters within the setback to the sea.
But there's a wall,
Correct, so
staircase,
correct, so the retaining wall requires the variance and the staircase would be permitted.
but the retaining wall is requiring a variance height, not its location.
Well, it's height within the setback to the sea.
Pardon?
It's the height of the retaining wall within the setback to the sea. If it was located outside of the setback to the sea, it would be fine.
Okay, so there's no problem with having a retaining wall right at high water mark, which is what I'm understanding. That's what it is. You know, it's not a green shores development, it's a hard retaining wall, and I thought that was best practices.
I think Councillor Morse, I'm a little confused by the question. So the retaining wall requires a variance because of its height more than 0.6 meters within the setback to the sea.
So
If
it
it's
doesn't-
lower than 0.6 meters, it would not require. a variance.
So just for clarification, then our bylaws allow somebody to build a 0.6 meter high wall right along the high water mark.
Yes.
Councillor Saunders, followed by Councillor Fast.
Thank you. Can you just go to the photographs again? I just want some clarity on something. There. No, back one, the one right before that. That wall that we're seeing along the top on the right, is that what we're talking about leading to the gravel pile?
Yes,
That's the retaining wall. Like, sorry,
sorry,
just so I'm just trying to make sure I'm clear. This,
no, it's the wall like on the others.
there.
Yeah,
Okay. So this wall could be 0.6 meters. It can need a variance for this to be higher than 0.6.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you.
And the other one isn't higher than 0.6.
no, that's not, yeah.
Thanks.
Councillor Fast, followed by Councillor Katie.
Thank you, Chair. My question is, I guess I've got two. One of them is it really above the high water mark? Because I'm looking at, for example, the photos that are there. The driftwood is all along the bottom of it. And one of the photos, photo 2 that was in the consultant's report near the end, showed pebbles that were actually up on the bottom step, obviously thrown there by waves. And you could see the rock had been scoured bare beforehand. How is it determined whether these works, and I'm including that big rock covering of all the gravel, how is it determined that they're above the natural boundary? Or the high water mark, whatever it's called.
Through the chair, so you can see on the screen, it's a little hard to read, but you can see on the bottom of this plan, they have 2 natural boundaries listed according to different subdivision plans, and there's a line in the middle that's the present natural boundary that's identified on site. So the walls are above that line. Slightly, the stairs appear to, like, you know, looking at this, it crosses one of those present natural boundary according to plan and crosses what's shown, or comes down to the edge of the present natural boundary, and then it's below the other natural boundary.
Oh, okay.
So
So
the wall itself is above, even though it looks like the staircase, depending on which plan you're looking at, may extend below.
right, okay. And so thank you. And I can see that natural boundary is not just something that's on a plan or okay, so my next question then is, what about all that crush rock? Do our bylaws allow the foreshore to be hardened in this way?
Through the chair, so we don't have specific, like if it's not a building or a structure, we don't allow site alteration beyond a certain scope. We don't have specific requirements around foreshore. We wouldn't allow work to extend beyond the present natural boundary because then it's provincial land, and if we see that, we do report it to the province.
Okay, so will you be reporting the toe of the staircase that extends below the natural boundary?
Through the chair, yes.
Thank you. And I have one more question, but I can take my turn.
You still have the floor, so yeah.
Okay. Thank you. Then my question is, will the fee for this development variance permit be the same as a development variance permit that was applied for before the work was done?
Through the chair, there's a fee for a retroactive development variance permit, and they would have paid that fee. It's just an application fee, so they pay a time of application regardless of outcome.
Okay, I lost your last few words there, but are you saying they'll pay more because they didn't come to get a permit before they did the work?
Through the chair, yes, they would have paid at the time of application the retroactive fee. They pay at application stage and not when they receive the permit, but at time of application. So they've already paid.
Okay, thanks. They've paid it, and they paid more than they would have done had they applied before they did the work.
Correct.
Oh, thank you. Okay, I just was mixed up. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Fast. Over to you, Councillor Gay.
Can we see the photos, please, of the two retaining walls? Next one, yes. So when Councillor Saunders went up and pointed to the retaining wall that's on the right, the first one that he pointed to, is that within the 0.6?
Yes.
And I think I'll add just through the chair, like any of the there's sections of the walls that are above and
Yes.
below. So any of the, if you look at the wall, the higher wall at the top end, it's lower than 0.6 and low as you go lower. So for both of them, the answer is a little bit, it's complicated.
Okay, so then the retaining wall that has staircase and then the handrail, that depending on how the land runs, right? So that one is the one that is above the 0.6. That is the one that needs the variance. Is that right?
Sir, you repeat your
The
question?
one that we're talking about, the lower one, if I can use that word, the one on the right in this photograph does not require a variance. It's below the 0.6.
Yes, the
And the one on the left,
one on the
with the
left,
staircase.
yes.
That's the problem.
yes, that's the one that there's again variance on.
Is there, I guess follow-up from trustee Fast or Councillor Fast's question, what's the difference in the cost of the permits before, if they applied in 2024, before they've done the work, and now? And do you know the difference in the cost of the permits? Roughly?
Just not off the top of my head, if it's a 25 or 50%.
But that's all set on.
It's a 50% surcharge. So it's 900 regularly, and then it would be, what is that, 1350 for a retroactive.
Okay.
Not seeing any further questions or comments. Would the council like to put a recommendation on the floor, please? A motion on the floor.
I'm not happy that they've done this, but I think there'd be more damage done by trying to take it out and remove it. And it's not that much higher, and it's the variances for the piece that isn't on the high lot part. So I'll move the council issue development variance permit DBP 2025-0143 for the variance of maximum height of retaining wall for 1771 Arbutus Point Road. Also noting we didn't get any more objections.
Second. Moved by Councillor Morse, seconded by Councillor Saunders. Any discussion on the motion? Councillor Getty.
I want to vote against this, and I reviewed my third question, but well, we still have staff on the hot seat. Is there anything in our bylaws or anything in the trust bylaws about the view from the water of the shoreline with this kind of work on it?
To each other, there's nothing in our land use bylaw. I don't know.
I'll be voting against this, and I guess I'm opposed in principle and somebody asking for permission after they've broken and not had any discussion, potentially broken all the rules. So I I find it, in terms of the remediation being some planting some bushes to be, and then, you know, an extra $400 for a permit fee, to be, quite a bit on the low side in terms of, creating a structure like this. And I think that the gravel and the, cement staircases, a real detraction from our natural shoreline and the view of some. I think there should have been more discussion before it was built. And I'm not at all good with people that come in and ask for permission after the fact. So,
And if I recall, just a question to staff, was the reason why this came to us for developments, but it was, I seem to recall some discussion that they were in some gray area where they built something, then we discovered, and then they had to come back for a variance. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct. They replaced the existing staircase with this structure. And yes, weren't discovered then.
Okay, and so the existing staircase was not at variance, and then they just went to replace it. This new one was at variance.
Correct.
Councilor Lake.
I'm struggling with this a little bit in that, and I think what Councilor Getty's getting at is there should be a little more consequences for going ahead and doing this. But I also agree with Councilor Morris that requiring them to remove it is going to be even more disruptive. And I don't see that that doesn't feel like a good way to go. So I'll be voting. Well, I'd like to, maybe what we could do here is get to a point where the penalty becomes larger somehow, but we don't have to remove it. But anyway, I'll leave it at that.
Okay, Councilor Fest.
Thank you. I'm not in favor of this development variance permit. I mean, it's clear that, you know, our land use bylaw doesn't protect our shorelines very much at all. If they can put all these things in, some of it is below the natural boundary, which may have environmental consequences, but I think it's got more to do with character and scenic consequences, as in by approving this development variance permit, it's death by 1,000 development variance permits. It's hardening our shoreline so we look more like the Mediterranean and less like a rural-ish Gulf Island in the Islands Trust. And I actually think we should maybe think about referring development variance permits to the Islands Trust, because it's one thing to have rules, and then it's another thing for have people go ahead or people ask for development permits in the proper way even. And because our bylaws offer so little protection, these big changes can go ahead. I'm referring here to Councillor Getty's comments about what about the view from the sea and from the neighbors, and the loss of vegetation on the shoreline. Anyway, I understand they're going to be paying a little bit more for a project like this. It seems to me to be a small amount to pay an extra, what, $450 for doing unpermitted works along one of our most sensitive and special areas of Bowen. As much as, you know, they're going to plant 30 native shrubs and they're going to remove some Scotch broom, to me, that's all of that doesn't add up to the public interest. And that's what I'm here to support, is nature and the public interest, to say nothing of climate change and where that natural boundary will be some years from now, and what corrective measures or further damage will have been done to the coastline of our island. So I won't, so far, unless somebody can convince me, I can't support the motion. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Fast. Just the comments from the chair, I think, the discussion has me a little confused as to whether we're talking about environmental impacts or scenic impacts. And my understanding of the report, and I'll look to the planners to correct me if I'm wrong, but based on the stamped environmental assessment that we have here, the conclusion is that, and I quote, the unpermitted development is not expected to result in significant environmental impacts. Is one part of it. So as far as the environmental impact of what's actually a relatively small staircase, I'm not particularly concerned. I've seen far worse on Bowen, and I think this council has taken strong action on those pieces. As far as the scenic or aesthetic outcome, I'd be very hesitant to go down the road of looking to penalize a resident for the aesthetic choices of their fee simple property. I mean, I might not like it if my neighbor decides to paint their house fluorescent pink, but as a council member, I'm not going to seek a penalty for that eyesore that lives right beside me. So given the relatively small scale of this, given that it does seem like, I don't get a sense that the resident had any malicious intent here. It seems like they went to replace an existing set of stairs and then got caught up in a bylaw gray area. And given that there's no environmental impact as signed off on by an environmental engineer, I have no problem voting in favor of this. Councillor Jurgensen.
I mean, if we weren't talking about the shoreline, I'd be way more in favor of it as it stands. I agree with the chair on the relatively small impact. I do think there's more work we need to do to strengthen our bylaws in general so we can ensure things like this don't happen again. But seeing as this was from a gray area, I think I'll support it this time, but we do need to, look more at how we can better protect our shoreline going forward.
Thank you, Councillor Jurgensen. Not seeing any further comments, I'll call the question on the main motion. All in favor, raise your hand, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, raise your hand, say nay.
Nay.
And the motion carries with Councillor Fast and Councillor Getty in opposition. Thank you, planners. Moving on to 7.1, Heritage Commission Establishment Bylaw Repeal, External Organization Implementation of the Ben Heritage Strategic Plan. Our Deputy Corporate Officer, Steph Short, joining us here today.
Thank you. All right. Some nice things set up, and I've got the new clicker from the Business Summit. So thank you, Mayor and Council, for hearing the presentation. I will be providing a clarification about council direction that was received last year at the end of the year during strategic planning. Do a brief overview of the governance restructure program that council has directed, where we are to date. Some examples of committee functions that have been repositioned, a bit of background information about heritage activities on or at Bowen Island Municipality, and some information and recommendations regarding options for functions served by the Heritage Commission and implementation of the strategic plan. So on December 16th, 2024, Council considered and approved the committee restructure implementation plan. This provided next steps options for committees to be dissolved, and for heritage, staff was directed to reach out to the Museum and Archives and the Bowen Island Heritage Preservation Association to determine interest and capacity. Staff was directed to develop a memorandum of understanding. There was also reference to an agreement there. To communicate council's decisions to dissolve the commission to repeal bylaw 392, which is the commission establishment bylaw, and ultimately transfer the heritage mandate to the external organization. I don't know how much time I need to spend on this, just a brief review of the reduction program began in 2021 with the previous council. And we have a new council, there was an orientation. We started in 2023, 2024, we got rid of the local advisory committees for the water. And then the December implementation plan session that I just spoke of. March 2025, there was a letter sent to committee members from the mayor and council. On the left there, just talking about the decision of which committees were to be dissolved. Reference to master plans that would guide ongoing priorities. And kind of an acknowledgement validation of the work that was done to create those plans by the volunteers. Parks plan, transportation, recreation, cultural, and grants policy, and advising next steps. So the next steps, if you look on the right with the italics, ensuring that key responsibilities were transferred thoughtfully, whether through partner organizations, my Zoom is blocking this one, municipal staff, or integration into broader council initiatives. Here are a few examples of work that's been transferred for the local water, local advisory committees. We've spoken of this at length. They were improvement districts. We are now much more experienced and knowledgeable of our water system, so staff has been able to take that on. We've created a water@bimpc.ca email address, which has public works, billing, communications on that email, so that members of the public have access to staff, community information meetings, and budget meetings. In addition, not mentioned here are the capital projects quarterly meetings that are held for Blue Water and EcoFlood. Okay. The recreation bylaw was recently repealed. Similar reasons, experienced staff, more developed recreation department program, this new facility. And we also have the PCAC to support some of that work. Community Grants Advisory Committee functions were passed on to staff guided ad hoc panel assembled annually or biannually. Housing Advisory Committee, we just saw today, has been taken over by the responsibilities taken over by Birch. That is supported by a partnering agreement. And just to note that staff and council do refer work to them. And finally, for this list, the Transportation Advisory Committee, that were amazing volunteers, but we're spinning their wheels a bit because we were at the point where they had to deal with provincial levels of beings that it was out of their scope. So Mayor Leonard and the CAO and other staff have taken on that advocacy work and have just recently done a great, very effective communities initiative. Okay. So heritage at municipality. First significant piece since the commission was founded in 2015 was the creation of the Community Heritage Register, which council adopted in 2021. This identifies 10 sites as having heritage value. To be clear, they're not designated, they're identified. That's a different legal term. They're all public property. There is an inventory which includes private property, which is not public because of the private property on it, but the inventory is part of what the work that's being done. Then the Heritage Strategic Plan was developed and adopted by council in 2023. Strategic Plan has three main goals. One, awareness and education. 2, preservation and conservation. 3, maintain and build the register. It's a bit fleshed out with strategic initiatives. I'll just name a couple. Under education, we can we've asked volunteers to identify important historical stories, design and install signage. Under conservation, keeping staff abreast of relevant legislation, identify funding resources is a strategic initiative, and adding to the register. So just back to the, just reporting back on what council direction was in December 2024, staff was directed to reach out to Museum and Archives and the Heritage Preservation Association to determine interest and capacity. Staff did this. The Heritage Preservation Association did not have interest or capacity. Museum and Archives did. The next step was to develop an MOU or an agreement. That is what is being asked about today. Repeal the bylaw is being asked about today. Or being presented today, sorry. And just to talk quickly about the multi-year funding agreement. So this, the community grants program that was applications be considered by the committee. They were finding year after year, the same people were applying, very large applications, very time consuming for the organizations and for the reviewing panel. Two of those were Museum and Archives and BIAC, the Heart. So the multi-year core funding agreement was created to minimize that work, increase efficiencies. The Hearth is operating under that. That's in your report package. I think that's going quite well. It talks about the importance of arts and culture programming on Bowen. It talks about the deliverable of implementing the cultural master plan, and it secures the funding. Museum and Archives operates under a similar, a little bit less prescriptive agreement, and that has expired. So it's ripe for revision. Staff recommend that heritage priorities be included in a revised Museum and Archives multi-year core funding agreement. And there have been concerns expressed regarding referrals. So staff receives volunteers feeling the need for comfort or assurance on being included in council's considerations. So therefore proposes that referrals be specifically addressed in a multi-year core funding agreement. Also, staff would like to note that Birch and the Bowen Island Conservancy are referred. The former by a partnering agreement and the latter a memorandum of understanding. Those referral include any kind of criteria, anything about reporting, that's up to council. Just a reminder of the rationale for the restructure program, efficiencies involving community and external entities. Okay, so then the alternative, or an alternative that has been proposed by former members of the commission, excellent, amazing, dedicated volunteers, is section 597 of the Local Government Act, which allow municipalities to designate existing organizations as a Community Heritage Commission. I did note in my report the review that I've done of the legislation doesn't outline what that would look like exactly. But Heritage BC does on its website, and I did have a short meeting with one of the governance experts at Heritage BC, and I can't see much difference between this model and the one council is directed to dissolve. I do believe from our public comments that there were some suggestions on how that could be a different, but that's that. Just getting near the end, speaking to the security of legislative mechanisms, that staff suggests that perhaps protecting heritage assets through bylaw might be more effective than protecting governance structure. So with the mind to protecting heritage assets, we have development permit areas. Right now we have a development permit area of the village periphery. That's the Snug Cove design guidelines ensures that heritage character is protected in that. That area could be expanded to include Davies Orchard, for example, or other areas of heritage import. The official community plan allows the designation of a heritage conservation area, again, to protect the assets. And there are other bylaws that I'm going to ask you to turn to the planning department about, but I think that once we have, like with the registry in play, once something is registered, then there are other bylaws that can protect property. So we talked about the implementation plan direction. We talked about the governance restructure program. A few examples of committee functions having been transferred. Heritage at the municipality and recommendations regarding the implementation of the strategic plan. Staff's recommendation today is the housekeeping piece of repealing bylaw number 392. Second recommendation is to direct staff to prepare a multi-year core funding agreement with the Museum and Archives, including provisions for implementation of the Heritage Strategic Plan. I would like to mention that this number is what was requested. It might be low. We have questions. We have different pieces, different departments here that can answer different questions. So, thank you for listening.
Thank you, Ms. Short. Over to Councillor Morse.
I have no problem with the Museum and Archives taking over the activities, of the Heritage Commission. And they are willing to do it, and I have no problem with us increasing the core funding to give them the adequate resources to do it. But I do think that Mr. Visor did have some good comments on utilizing Local Government Act 597 and replacing and making them the commission or to take on the activities of the commission. And I just haven't had time to totally work through those differences in my mind. Because I think having some official agency that has that legislative requirement from the Government Act is probably not a bad idea. So but I don't know whether we need to change the service agreement at this point. But can we do the service agreement and designate them as the Heritage Commission under section 597? Because I assume we still need the service agreement to allow the funding. So at this point, does it matter if we wait another 2 weeks?
I think that's a fair question. You know, I come back to the legislation. So these pieces are governed by a section both of the community charter as well as the Local Government Act. So in the community charter, section 143 says that council may establish and appoint a commission to do one or more of the following. There's 3 things. So a commission can operate services, can undertake operation and enforcement in relation to the council's exercise of its authority to regulate, to prohibit, or to impose requirements. The third is to manage property and licenses held by the municipality. So those are the 3 functions of a municipal commission as listed in the community charter. Operate services, undertake regulation, or manage property. And section 597, which is in the Local Government Act, which has been referenced, I think there's an interesting piece in here. So 597, the first part talks about the community charter being able to establish commission. The second part is a little trickier because it says that in relation to an organization that's designated effectively as a commission, when that organization is acting as a community heritage commission, the organization is deemed to be a commission established under the applicable provision. And goes on to say that the member is deemed to be, when a member of the organization is acting as a member of a community heritage commission, the member is deemed to be a member of a commission established under the applicable provision referred to in subsection 1. So what happens is in naming an external entity as a commission, when they're acting in their commission role, they effectively become a quasi-regulatory arm of the municipality, which I think gets a little problematic as a community organization. And so in this, my general thoughts is that, because I've been giving this a lot of thought and working this through, is that, the Heritage Commission established about 10 years ago has done fantastic work, and the care of its members have been fantastic in protecting Bowen Island's history. The dedication is deeply appreciated, and we've got the heritage strategic plan to show for it. We've had a renewed interest in heritage. We've worked on things together like the Davies Orchard and identified, pieces around the island that have been inspiring to see. But that said, I think it's about choosing a model that functions for a small municipality that aligns with the legislation, aligns with the capacity that we have, and the spirit of the Heritage Master Plan. And so the challenge with the regulatory piece is that once created by a bylaw, because the commission has to operate as an independent authority to counsel with rules around its advocacy, its independence and process, becomes a statutory body, I think you end up losing some of the potential like grassroots community-based advocacy that can arise out of a community organization, like we see with other organizations that we have partner agreements with, whether it's Conservancy or Birch, who have done great work. From this seat, I would love to see an organization that isn't charged to be a quasi-regulatory entity, but is actually like where advocacy, where volunteerism, and where that heritage issue lives in a way that's not within the existing bureaucracy. I think heritage commissions in some other municipalities work because those other municipalities are larger, they have more resources, there's a deeper administrative capacity to handle some of these pieces. And I'm really not sure about right sizing it for both. What I favor over the community partnership model is that I think there's an advocacy piece that then that organization can bring to council, whether it's having the municipality exercise its legislative authority to add properties to the heritage register, to declare heritage zones, to order heritage inspections. Like that group can advocate for the municipality to exercise its legislative duties, because that's how the Heritage Commission works right now. They can't kind of enact things themselves. They've got to go through council anyways, and they have to do it within kind of the rigor and Robert's Rules process of the municipality anyways, which I think sort of in some ways can nullify and take the warmth and sometimes take the point out of what's being advocated for. I think it's important to clarify that if a commission is repealed, there's things that aren't lost by repealing the commission. So council still retains its full authority to protect heritage sites through bylaw, to designate heritage registers, to request professional assessments, to form topic-specific committees or advisory panels as needed, because all of those tools exist for council and for local government in both the Local Government Act as well as the Community Charter. That said, there is a piece in, so I'm just flipping through multiple documents here trying to get my thoughts all together, but there is a financial piece. So the proposed $2,000 agreement with Museum and Archives as written, I question whether it's enough to meaningfully implement the Heritage Master Plan. And I think there's a piece here for staff and council as we start to go through our core funding agreements generally, is yes, we absolutely need multi-year agreements with community organizations so that those organizations know what's coming down the road in a few years from now. They're not coming back to us every year, stressed, wondering if their funding's going to be renewed. But I think there's also the opportunity within those multi-year core funding agreements to get a bit more detailed with the specific projects that are being funded, right? What's happening, the impacts, the expected reach. One, as a way, I think, to report back to the public trust, but also secondly, to really celebrate what's happening. And I think what we're seeing with some of the existing community partnerships already, as they come back to council and they tell us what they're doing, it puts us in a good position as council to know what's happening in the community, what's happening at that kind of grassroots volunteerism level, and then for us around this table and for staff to be able to bring that back out into the community and celebrate it. So I would be, the second recommendation around the funding piece, I think I would be looking to massage that a little bit. When I look at the strategic goals, pick one at random. Goal 1, strategic initiative 3, hold a symposium with island heritage groups to advance common goals and develop community capacity regarding heritage. Like, that's a $2,000 project right there, right? So if there's like a specific sort of piece of the heritage strategic plan that Museum and Archives wants to take on, because really, I think in general, when I look at goal 1, promote the awareness, interpretation, and appreciation of value of heritage, I mean, that's already bang on. Like, that organization is already doing that and carrying it out. But if there's elements within that, or goal 2 or goal 3 that they would like to carry out for a set amount of funding, I would really love to hear about that. Whether it's, you know, maintaining and adding and providing recommendations to the Heritage Register, whether it's work on doing some work towards a heritage conservation area. You know, bring that back, attach a dollar figure to it so that council can see what it is and that we can get like concrete metrics about what's happening instead of a vague, you know, implement 9 strategic objectives. So that would be my feedback so far. Yeah, so to tie it up, main theme is that I think by appointing an external agency as a heritage commission under bylaw creates some quasi-regulatory challenges and bureaucratic overhead for whatever organization that takes that on, and they would lose their ability to advocate and have that advocacy funding. And the second part is that I think we really need to look at the dollar amount that would go out to them based on what I'm seeing in the strategic initiatives. It should be more. Councillor Jurgensen, Councillor Fast, Councillor Getty.
Thank you, Chair. So I am currently not in favor of repealing the bylaws that currently stands. I think that there's some work that can be done to come to a workable solution. I think expanding our heritage, conservation area to include more area would be one step, whether that be the whole island or a subset of it as identified. But I also think a more important piece to this particular discussion is a bylaw to replace bylaw 702 that would allow the Museum and Archives to request whenever anything is coming up for consideration, any property applications, those kind of things be flagged, to request that council make a referral to the organization for heritage input. I say this because we are a council that values heritage. That's been pretty clear in the way it's been conducted this term, but we can't say that going forward that will be a priority. A bylaw offers a little bit more protection for that request to be able to be made to council. I don't know all the mechanics of this. I would suggest that we defer the repeal of this bylaw till at least the next council meeting to allow for some of this to be kind of looked at either by members of the commission or by staff, just to see what we can come up with. And maybe that's tied to that development permit area where anything within the development permit area automatically gets referred to the Museum and Archives. But I would like to see something in bylaw to replace 702 that would allow heritage, values to be preserved within bylaw.
Thank you, Councillor Jurgensen. Councillor Fast.
Thank you, Chair. And thanks for all the digging into the legislation that you did on this. And great comments, everybody. And I'm looking forward to what Trustee Getty has to say. I would be willing to give it first reading, the first one, the repeal bylaw first reading. And then the second one, I'm looking at the staff report, page 3, under the heading feasibility. And where it says staff would require, if we're decided not to pursue a core funding agreement, investigate the administrative implications of designating an existing body, and etc. So I've got a motion prepared, and I'll be interested to hear what others say, that says basically, let's get some more info before we take down a heritage commission that took years to get into place, and that may be more useful keeping as a heritage commission rather than, and we need more information about the Community Heritage Commission kind of idea, whether it would be as useful in helping, for example, with planning, as others have mentioned, at the application stage, intergovernmental work, such as was happening with earlier councils with Metro Vancouver around the cottages, and could still be in play in the future around the Heritage Promenade or other Crippen Park features. Funding, like which structure would assist Bowen Museum and Archives in applying for grants best? Would one have an advantage? Because I don't want to be taking energy from this community group without giving them the potential to grow and expand their staff, their effectiveness, their community outreach, their education tools. Who knows what they would be wanting to apply for grants for, but would one of these structures be better? And more community input. And the last thing I'm interested in is the First Nations reconciliation side of things. There's changes in the Heritage Conservation Act coming. Could they overlap? Would there be some changes are underway? So the existing legislation might not help us much here, but I think there's going to be more work for council and staff coming down the line that we might want more advice about. And in which case, what kind of structure would be best for that? These are just some things I don't see in the staff report. Maybe I missed them. So my idea of giving it first reading to take to repeal the Heritage Commission, but I wouldn't want to go further than that. And the second one, to investigate, direct staff to investigate the administration and implications of designating BIMA as a Community Heritage Commission, of such approaches as described in the staff report, and the feasibility, under feasibility, and the effectiveness of these to meet our strategic goals, something like that. Anyway, so that's my position currently. I'm cautious because I know how much work went into setting up the Heritage Commission, and that it has powers as described in some of the. I'm just not convinced that the core funding agreement fee for service kind of model will bring grants or more capacity to the possibility of more capacity to the Bowen Island Museum and Archives, who I've got the greatest respect for, as with the existing Heritage Commission. So I want to do what's best. Thank you. Over.
Thank you, Councillor Fast. Over to Councillor Getty.
I'm in favor of either deferring it or the most first reading. And I think what we're being asked for is time, and I think that would be very helpful. I remember having fairly detailed, Don Luxton came to Bowen many years ago and gave us very detailed explanations of this is not just one section, 597, it's whole part 15 of the local government act. And I think there's so much that's intertwined and interrelated that we did argue long and hard to try and get the commission formed, and it was a distinct advantage and it was important. And I don't remember the details of all of those discussions and reasons, but I think that this has come on fairly suddenly. I haven't had time to go through the legislation. I was involved in silly little things like Christmas Carol and breakfast and whatever, but it's a complicated section of legislation. And I think that if staff have had the opportunity to talk to people at BC Heritage and they have some ideas that it would be really helpful for everybody to sit down and understand what advice they do have and get clarity. Staff was saying that parts of it aren't clear, and that she has she's formed an opinion in terms of the differences are. I can't see much difference between what's being proposed and what they're talking about. So I think that it's important for the Museum and Archives to have that discussion so that they're, if they have clarity or they have differences, that they can talk to staff and work it out and figure out why we work so hard at the time to get this set up and whether or not the, you know, if there's a difference between, and I don't have the same sense that it was ever a matter of getting bogged down in terms of your bureaucratic municipal processes. It was a matter of having that recognition and support. That was part of being able to get credibility with, not that there's a huge range of funding sources for heritage, but I think there unfortunately has been pullback from this community in terms of not understanding and appreciating, you know, certainly what we've lost in Davies Orchard, I think is one of the biggest tragedies that my experience living on Bowen, but that's obviously my strong bias. But I think that if we are accepting that heritage is both an important part of life on Bowen and something that would be extremely helpful in terms of soft tourism and economics of people that are interested in getting, you know, restoration projects up and going and all the rest of it, then I think we use this time to give the organization that has the energy and the volunteers and the interest to clarify about this. It feels rushed to me. I had expected third reading of this and I haven't had a chance to get in and dig into it. And my impression was that was part of the problem with respect to Mr. Baseboard's presentation, and that what we're being asked is to defer it to get time to get clarification. I fully supported that, and I think it is much more complicated in terms of the interpretation of the both the community charter and the local government act and how it overlaps. So I'd certainly like to have clarity in mind for working on this.
Councilor Wake, followed by Councilor Morrison.
Thank you. This is way above my pay grade. But if I can simplify here, it seems like the second recommendation is what we want to go with, the multi-year core funding agreement with the museum, Bowen Island Museum and Archives. And the question is whether or not we need to repeal the bylaw. I agree with Councillor Getty. I think why don't we take Mr. Baseford's recommendation and defer and let people understand this a lot better than I do anyway. Come up with a recommendation that addresses what's been brought up here today.
Thank you, Councilor Wake. Councilor Morrison.
So from a process perspective, I think if we wanted to designate the Museum and Archives as the Heritage Commission, we would have to repeal the existing bylaw and I don't understand why designate requires a bylaw, but that's because I haven't had time to read everything. And I think we probably also would need a core funding agreement in order to provide them with enough money to perform the function. So, so to that extent where it says feasibility, if council opts not to pursue a core funding agreement, I think what we're wanting to do at this point is confirming whether a subcommittee of the Museum and Archives qualified for heritage designation, or does it have to be the Museum and Archives themselves? Getting some information on other communities that have got where they've designated a community organization. And then, so I'm in favor of deferring and asking staff to provide some more information, or we can do a little research committee and I had too much to carry today, so I left my heritage binder at home.
Right.
Which I have all the history of the establishment of the Heritage Commission in there.
So from a process standpoint,
Sorry, point of access?
yep,
I had my hand up for second round if it's being taken.
sure, yep, and I'm gonna jump in here for second round, first.
Okay.
From a process standpoint, just managing the conversation in the room here, I'm gonna hold council to, this a little bit, because I would remind council that this came out of a strategic discussion in 2024, when this course of action was decided by council. Subsequently, council put the mayor in front of the chairs of all the committees announcing this. So this isn't a new initiative, this isn't a new discussion. And if there's a desire to take time, whether it's to defer this conversation or to have a first reading so that more information can be collected, what council needs to do around this table is get very clear on what that information is and what that direction is. Because there was a course of action that was put on the rails through council resolution that is now starting to get a bit fuzzy, and has also put me in certain positions of needing to represent council positions that seem to be about. So if there's a motion to defer, great, that's council's ability, and council can do that by resolution. If there's a motion to do a first reading, council can do that as well. However, I would ask that the direction to staff, the resolution of the information that's required, needed, direction moving forward, be crystal clear. And over to you, Councillor Davidson.
Thank you, Chair. And to your point there, I think I agree. I think deferring and then being crystal clear to staff. I think by deferring it at this point, we can come back with greater direction to staff for the next council meeting to be able to vote on a resolution, since it seems like different folks around the table desire different pieces of information from staff. And I think that would be good to get cohesively clear, for staff at the next council meeting. I did want to speak to Councillor Fast's remarks about the commission having certain powers it currently does, as set out in the legislation. As council, we haven't delegated a lot of that power to the commission that we could. The legislation says we can, doesn't mean that we have, and I don't believe we have at this point. The other piece regarding Councillor Getty's comment about Davies Orchard is, had we not simply gone with a Heritage Commission, but also had a development permit area that it took heritage into consideration that included Davies Orchard and not just Snook Cove Village, we would have had a lot of more legislative tools to be able to influence a different result than what happened with Metro Vancouver. So I think that there is, I personally voted when we voted to dissolve the commission. My understanding was that there was the option of 397 in the legislative local government act. My apologies. And that was the direction that my understanding was that we would take, whether that was clear or not, to and whether, I went on something that I made an assumption that may have been my fault. But that was my understanding of where the process could at least go. And that was under which I voted in favor for that resolution. So what I'm looking for here is I'd like to put a motion on the floor to defer, and then to have council work together between this council meeting and next to come up with something that's direction for staff on what we would like to see back from staff. So is it possible for me to throw a motion on the floor?
Yeah, so if you have the wording of a motion, you can put the motion on the floor.
Okay. The wording of my motion is that council defer item 7.2 from the
7.1.
7.1 from the December 8th, 2025 council meeting do I need to insert the date of the council meeting where this will be discussed?
I'll look to our corporate officer for the.
Through the chair, that would be helpful, yes.
Okay,
Councilor Jurgensen, floor, Councilor.
so I would like to defer it to, I don't have my calendar in front of me, so I can't tell what not the next council meeting, but the one after that. Can I get some input on that from the corporate officer through the chair?
Yes, Councillor Jurgensen, that is January 26, 2026.
Okay, then the council defer item 7.1 from the December 8th, 2025 council meeting to January 26th, to the January 26th, 2026 council meeting, and that council work together to bring forward a resolution giving staff clear direction on additional information requested for the January 12th, 2026 council meeting.
I'm going to rule the second half of that motion out of order because the only way that a council can decide that is at a regular meeting of council. So you would have to have a gathering of council to actually do that. So the appropriate time to come up with that would be around the table, just like we were.
Okay, then in that case, can we add that as an agenda item to the January 2020, the January 12th, 2026 council meeting instead for the second half?
Maybe I'll look to the corporate to see how that's been captured.
So just to clarify, Councillor Jurgensen, I have that council defer item 7.1 from the December 8th, 2025 council meeting to the January 26th, 2026 council meeting. Did you want to revise that to January 12th?
No, sorry, I was looking to have council discuss what it would like staff to get more information on at the January 12th council meeting. So that staff can then go from the January 12th council meeting, get the information and bring it back as part of the discussion for January 26th.
Hasn't been seconded yet, so I'm going to look to the corporate office to see how it's been captured.
That council defer item 7.1 from the December 8th, 2025 council meeting to the January 26th, 2026 council meeting, and that council discuss direction to staff at the January 12th, 2026 council meeting.
Thank you. That captures it perfectly, and thank you, Chair, for ruling the second half of my original motion out of order. I always appreciate the Robert's Rule of Order and council procedure support.
So it's been moved. Is there a seconder? Seconded by Councillor Lake. Discussion on the motion. Mr. Saunders.
Having listened to the discussion, I strongly get the sense that people, more information is always good. I certainly understand that, and getting a better understanding of things, I'm in favor of that. Having said that, I feel like we had this discussion several times about the dissolution of different committees, and I recognize there's some new arguments have come up, so there's probably a lot of value in deferring it and having further discussion about it and getting more information from staff. I would so I'm probably gonna support deferring it, but again, I just want to comment that I feel like we've had the discussion already, or at least large parts of it. And the second thing I'd want to suggest with that is that I'm not sure that the January 12th to January 26th timeframe is going to work. It feels like that'd be pretty tight for staff for us to have a discussion on the 12th, say, here's what we want you to find out, then get back, and then we vote on it 2 weeks later. It seems unlikely to me. That seems like we're kind of putting something on staff with a pretty tight timeline that might not be feasible.
That would likely come after the agenda planning if it doesn't work that way, and we would perhaps have in discussion with the corporate officer and the CAO, we would have a add an extra meeting or something like that. Councillor Fast, I believe your hand is up.
Yes, thank you. I was going to also propose a motion, but with this one on the floor and having been seconded, the trouble is I can't see it. I'm wondering if it could be on the screen. Otherwise, I'm in favor. I think the question is, we need more info, and if it says what I think I've been hearing, I just am mixed up about the dates.
Thank you, Councillor Fast. We're putting that motion up on the screen now. Then over to Councillor Gay.
All right, I'm going to suggest an amendment to it so that and it might be material, but to cancel the last sentence, council discuss direction to staff the January 12th. We're talking about we're 2 weeks away from Christmas, and January 12th is right after the break. I'm not sure about having had all of these discussions, getting some clarity in terms of reminding myself of the original strategic plan that was blocked out here in the display. So I think that if we are going to have another discussion, that it happen on January the 26th. That gives everybody enough time to dig into this, have some idea if there's more directions to staff specifically, and not end up with 2 discussions, one on the 12th where we're maybe not fully prepared, and then another one on the 26th.
So I'm curious.
The motion is to amend to drop that last sentence that's just been highlighted.
So an amendment to strike the second phrase, which states council discuss direction of staff at the January 12th, 2026 council meeting.
Second.
Seconded by Councillor Fast. Any discussion on the amendment? Not seeing any.
I do.
Yep, go ahead, Councillor Jurgensen.
I would be happy to support the striking of that second part. It was never intended to have staff have to work in a super tight time crunch. More just to figure out if we need any little pieces, but I appreciate what Councillor Getty is saying, that we can always request that at the January 26th meeting, and I'm comfortable with that as well. So I will be in favor of this motion.
Thank you, Councillor Jurgensen. So calling the question on the amendment, all in favor, raise your hand and say aye.
Aye.
Aye. And that carries unanimously. Back to the main motion that reads this council refer item 7.1 from the December 8th, 2025 council meeting to the January 26th, 2026 council meeting.
Second.
That's already been moved and seconded, so we're just back at discussion and debate. Okay, all in favor, raise your hand, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed?
I'm in favor.
Okay, and that carries unanimously. So just to wrap up on this amendment or this motion, to be very clear, this motion directs staff, it does nothing except defer this discussion until a council meeting in January. And yes, Councillor Morse.
I would like to move that we request staff to provide us with information on communities that have a Heritage Commission designation to an external organization.
Okay, moved by Councillor Morse. Seconded by Councillor Wake. Any discussion on the motion? Councillor Saunders.
What specific information, like which organizations to the chair? Sorry, I'm not clear on what you're asking.
Well, in the feasibility on point 2A, it said consulting comparative communities and relevant organizations to understand their governance models. So we need to find out who all these other organizations are.
Okay, so
If nobody else has done this before, then do we want to be the groundbreaker? But if a whole ton of them have done it and it works really well, then good.
Yeah, okay, no, that's really what I was asking. Are we just asking to say, are we just finding out who does it? So.
Okay. And, you know, I'll just put it out there that, I mean, this is something that folks around this table can also take on. Like, again, this has been a process that's been in the works for a year now. And it's a discussion that we should be prepared to come to the table to make an actual decision on. So there's been lots of information said that we don't have this, we don't have that, we need this, we need that. Different things from different folks. So I would certainly encourage council to source that information, pair it with whatever staff brings back to us, and be ready to go on January 12th or 26th, whenever we come back. Once again,
I'm not sure if that's ultimately the kind of information that we need. I think that the museum and archives are the perfect organization in this community to take it on. They're willing to take it on. And that, you know, if they become designated, I think the question is there a loss in terms of linking it to the municipality by bylaw as opposed to that designation? So in terms of, you know, other communities that are doing it, I don't know what all the comparative units might be. I think that it's just a matter of whether or not there's anything to be gained or anything to be lost.
Well, that's exactly what I'm getting at. By finding out the other communities that are doing it, we've got the model to follow.
Okay. I think it's a governance issue, sorry. Through the chair.
so the motion's been moved and seconded. Can I have the motion read back, please?
The council directs staff to provide information on communities that have designated a community heritage commission.
Organization. Community organization. That's it. Heritage Commission.
Community heritage organization.
No, a community organization as a heritage commission. It's a given of the heritage.
That council directs staff to provide information on communities that have designated a community organization as a heritage.
So it's
Sophie, can you repeat your last word? I dropped it.
Just the whole thing, once again, that council directs staff to provide information on communities that have designated a community organization as a heritage commission.
Thank you.
Move seconded. Any further discussion? Not seeing any, I'll call the question. All in favor, raise your hand and say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed, raise your hand and say nay.
No.
And that carries with Councillor Getty and Councillor Jurgensen in opposite. Okay, we're coming up just at about 2.5 hours now. I'm going to suggest that we take a 5-minute recess. We'll come back at 3:25.
Sorry, come back when?
3:25.
Thank you.
Or unmuted and back.
Way back.
Okay, so I'm gonna call this back to order at 3:28 PM and we are on agenda item 7.2, 1428 and 1430 Eagle Cliff Road rezoning. We have Daniel Martin, our manager of planning and development, joining us here today.
Thank you, Mayor Levin. So this is an application to rezone the zoning of two properties along Eagle Cliff that would allow change the land use bylaw and the plans that these two properties could subdivide to create a third property. Just a way of overview where we are in the process. So this had a public hearing on the 24th of November, and so we are presenting the bylaws for third reading at this stage. The bylaw, the OCP amendment bylaw still would need to be approved by the Allen's Trust before council could consider adoption of the bylaws. Held a public hearing November 24th. There were 7 letters received and 1 speaker. The applicant spoke in favor. We received 2 letters of support representing 5 neighboring properties, so showing the little check marks there. 2 letters received from neighbors with questions and concerns around Bluff Creek protection and groundwater. And then 3 letters of opposition received from islanders outside the notice area who are categorized generally opposing the OCP amendment, pointing to our project to update the OCP. So just staff comment for the geotechnical and water concerns. In the report, we talk about sort of relying on the environmental and geotechnical reports submitted as part of the rezoning and subdivision applications, stating that proposed subdivision would not harm Bluff Creek, and also the subdivision requirement to ensure groundwater extraction does not reduce existing water sources. So in this proposed, following the rezoning and the proposed subdivision, the applicant would move from a water license on Bluff Creek to groundwater extraction. And so there was some concern from the neighbors about the potential for that to still reduce the flow of Bluff Creek and that they rely on water licenses from the creek. And then as well to note the rezoning, a condition of the rezoning would be a restricted covenant that would place protections along Bluff Creek, especially the lower portions of Bluff Creek, reducing risk of disturbance along the creek. And then I had some comment on the OCP amendment discussion and about postponing it, essentially saying that to staff, that seems very much like a council policy discussion. So when we introduced the report, we brought that as an alternative for council. Council proceeded with the rezoning. Council could at any time decide, an OCP amendment, maybe it's appropriate to defer until the update is complete. So just alternatives for council to refer the bylaws back to staff for clarification, direct staff not to proceed until the update project has been completed. Council could defeat the proposed bylaws and deny the application. The recommendation is to give these 2 readings or 2 bylaws third reading and to refer the OCP amendment bylaw to the Islands Trust for approval. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Martin. I'll look to council for questions of the planner.
So the geotechnical and the water concerns from the neighbors, is there gonna be a covenant that will protection around Bluff Creek? So is that gonna be a covenant or? I mean, because I'm thinking just in the general construction, there could be impacts to Bluff Creek.
So through the chair, you can see on the screen the proposed area of this restricted covenant. So Bluff Creek itself comes through sort of a portion of the property here as it comes down to Eagle Cliff. And this area in black is the proposed covenant area. So the lower reaches of Bluff Creek where it crosses the subject properties would be under the restricted covenant. And then the property as it abuts the ground line.
Okay, and the covenant will provide for monitors and things at the time of construction and that kind of thing?
Correct. So the yes, so as called for in the environmental assessment, the covenant would specify monitoring.
Councilor Fast.
Thank you, Chair. I've looked at this and I've looked at the and followed along. I just wanted to let people know, Parks, Trails, PCAC, the Parks, Environment and Climate Action Committee, didn't comment on this because they were kind of in the midst of changing as per our committee restructuring. So this one didn't come to them, and that's why there's no comments from them. But I think it looks good to me. I see that the better protection of the creek through the conservation covenant and through the erosion and development control plan, or whatever it's called, that is in the consultants' recommendations that staff are supporting, and also the 50% conservation of 50% of the properties, I think is significant, and conservation covenant. So I'll be prepared to move the motion if you'd like, Chair.
Okay, yeah, I just have one question of staff, which I think is worth addressing. Some of the feedback that I saw, I think on this one as well as the next one, is in relation to official community plan amendments that are happening within the backdrop of an official community plan being amended. And I can certainly understand where those comments come from. I'm curious about just the implications for the new plan. So I know that zonings are being reconsidered and streamlining some of the zonings, et cetera, et cetera. What happens to these amendments when we adopt a new official community plan?
Through the chair, they would presumably, I think the assumption is they would be captured in the new plan. So when we adopted the Collins Road rezoning a few meetings ago, and so we would be providing that updated map to the consultants as part of drafting new land use designations.
Okay.
And same with this one and the other one, if should council adopt.
Okay. This question goes one step farther into kind of like OCP interest question. Like it feels as if, like if I was to extrapolate what we're doing here to the last, since 2014, when we've adopted the existing official community plan, it feels like a long time ago, basically. That we've got like sort of the mental metaphors, like we've got all these post-it notes of amendments throughout the community plan that we buried, and a book that's kind of full of all these variances now. Are we going to be able to like make that into a cohesive whole in the new plan, or do we just sort of carry all these exceptions and amendments and whatnot forward? Is that even a question that can be answered at that point?
I think probably not. We have fully discussed sort of land use designations with the committee, even at this point. We've been focused sort of much higher. I know recently we were having discussion with some of the subcommittees about sort of density transfer, or almost in a sense, it's like how much does the OCP do that shaping of land use and like designating, to some extent, it could be amending the current land use designations to provide more growth in areas where we see appropriate and less growth in areas we see appropriate, both of which sort of carry challenges in doing and sort of presenting that to council and the community, saying what change, people feeling like they have a right to what has been given to them, or like opinions on whether other areas should grow more.
Right.
Is a challenge, and one we haven't reassessed yet with the committee.
Okay. And so maybe how do I phrase this? So in your capacity as a planner, and as a planner, not as a employee of the municipality that has to keep council satisfied and happy and cozy, like, are there detrimental implications, or like, do you see detrimental implications of approving amendments like these while an OCP is happening and in progress, or are there going to be knock-on effects?
I think at this point, I would say no for sort of these three that are in this bucket, right? Of this one and the Collins Road one, which you approved, and then Mount Gardner one you're going to talk about next, in terms of also going to be one, like, making one additional lot in places. We are through this, we're having to create an additional land use designation, which may get trickier. So potential, and I think as it gets even messier as we get into the point where there's like an OCP bylaw or an OCP map that's going through consultation, and we're simultaneously considering amendments to our existing one, gets very messy on how to relate them together. Yeah, but I don't think we're at that stage yet.
Right. Okay. Yeah, that's helpful. As long as I know that the zoning regime isn't going to come to a grinding halt as a result of what feels like relatively minor amendments, I'm okay with it. Okay. Councilor.
I've always thought that the OCP, I've understood that the OCP should be an enabling document, not a disabling document and restrictive document. And I think these sorts of amendments, while we're in the OCP process, basically inform the OCP rather than having the OCP come higher level and somehow decide how these amendments are going to go. It doesn't seem practical to me.
Not seeing, oh, Councillor Fast.
Just as the chair of the previous OCP steering committee, this seems to me to be in order. They're relying on policies like our conservation development policy that was adopted by a previous council. There's I don't think the OCP is going to be really affected by this, not the process. I think we can trust the process. Partly what I was getting at with the advisory committee not having been involved in this one is that's one of the ways that the word gets out into the community that these things are underway and that they're going through a process of vetting. And so perhaps that's why those comments came from the people that are not specifically neighbors. It might have put up some alarm bells. And but I am confident from my experience with the past OCP that this is a good idea to be carrying out these small adjustments and not holding them up. So I'd be prepared to move the motion if you're ready.
I just have Councillor Getty in the speaker's queue, and then I'll come back to you, Councillor Fast.
So this is clearly labeled as an exception. And that's the E1, correct? And that will stay. So I think that in every line of work, there's always going to be these little problem things that come up, and you're going to have to finesse some sort of a solution that fits both the needs of the larger community and the needs of the applicant. And it's finding that, and I think that's what we've been trying to do in all of, for this one in particular, in terms of having that restrictive covenant to meet the clear concerns of the neighbors and the people that are sharing the water resource. And I also think that with respect to the letters that we've got about the OCP process that we're in right now, that, you know, as long as we're really clear, it's a small problem, that's an exception, that is not, we're not suggesting anything zoning amendment, that I'm prepared to support this this resolution for this law.
Thank you, Councillor Getty. Back to you, Councillor Fast, for the recommendation.
Sure, okay, thank you. I move that that bylaw number 693, cited as Bowen Island Municipal Official Community Plan bylaw number 282, 2010, amendment bylaw number 693, 2025, be read a third time. That bylaw number 694, cited as Bowen Island Municipality Land Use bylaw number 57, 2002, amendment bylaw number 694, 2025, be read a third time. And that council refer bylaw number 693, 2024 to the Islands Trust for approval.
Is it 24 or 25?
It is 25, sorry, that's a typo.
Okay, so the last clause reads, the council refer bylaw number 693, 2025 to the Islands Trust for approval.
Good catch.
Moved by Councillor Fast, seconded by Councillor Saunders. Any further discussion on this one? Not seeing any, I will call the question. All in favor, raise your hand, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. And that carries unanimously. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Moving on to 7.3, 1316 Mount Gardner Road rezoning. Bylaws number 675 and 673. We're back in our island community.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. So the purpose of this report is to present Council with rezoning and OCP amendment bylaws 1360 Mount Gardner Road to be given third reading and for bylaw number 675 to be referred to the Islands Trust for approval. So as a recap, this application is to rezone and to amend the zoning and OCP designation of 1360 Mount Gardner Road to allow subdivision to create one additional residential lot. The rezoning and OCP amendment bylaws have received 2 readings from council, and a public hearing was held on November 24th. So 5 councilors attended that public hearing, which was held virtually and in person. So in response to the public hearing notice, 1 letter of support was received ahead of the hearing. While at the hearing, 1 speaker expressed concerns about the application and ultimately opposed the application at the meeting. I should note one additional letter of support was received after the public hearing deadline. So a voluntary amenity contribution of approximately $25,000 has been offered as part of their rezoning. So that will be required by covenants. The contribution is made prior to subdivision approval. Ultimately, staff recommend that council gives third reading to bylaws number 673 and 675, and that bylaw number 675 is referred to the Islands Trust for approval.
Okay. Questions for the planner? Not seeing
I'll
anything.
move the recommendation.
Okay, go ahead, Councilor Morse.
That bylaw number 673 cited as Bowen Island Municipality Land Use Bylaw number 57, 2002. Amendment bylaw number 673, 2025 be read a third time. And that bylaw number 675 cited as Bowen Island Municipality Official Community Plan bylaw number 282, 2010. Amendment bylaw number 675, 2025 be read a third time. And that council refer bylaw number 675, 2025 to the Islands Trust for approval.
Moved by Councilor Morse, seconded by Councilor Getty. Any further discussion? Not seeing any. I will call the question. All in favor, raise your hand, say aye.
Aye.
Aye, and that carries unanimously. Okay, moving on to staff reports, 8.1, for 1033 Miller Road. We have our manager of planning and development joining us here today.
Thank you, Mayor Leonard. I have for you today a report on a lease for 1033 Miller Road for an affordable housing project. So as a reminder, this parcel is municipally owned land located just behind the Bowen Island Health Center next to the Bowen Island Fire Hall. And so background, we came in July of 2025, initially in June and then again in July for the final decision. Council authorized a lease agreement with Bowen Municipality and Lookout Housing and Health Society for housing development in 1033 Miller. And at that time, you also adopted bylaw 676, which is the housing agreement bylaw that governs aspects of the housing development as well. And you authorized Lookout to submit an application for a building permit. And so we, in terms of updates, so following that direction, we prepared the lease agreement and Lookout to enter into that lease agreement. However, before we registered the lease, BC Housing informed Lookout of concerns proceeding with a lease agreement that was not based on their standard template. And we had received sign off from BC Housing, I'll say in the spring. So we then worked on the revised lease agreement where we reviewed the standard template, identified minor edits to that agreement for clarity and to capture other agreements in the lease document itself. And we had that prepared to bring to council for your consideration. And then we received additional update from BC Housing that any deviation from the template lease could trigger an extended review period. And the risk for that would be risking start dates and potential final lending approval. So the way that Lookout has to proceed with this project essentially is they're looking to get their building permit issued, at which point they can tender the project, get actual construction quotes for proceeding. And at that point, they would get final approval from BC Housing and CMHC for the grant funding and mortgage approval. And so their concern is that any extended review of the lease could extend the period before they could get their building permit, before they could lock in quotes, and they may then not receive final. And just to note, so the housing agreement adopted by council remains in effect and governs the affordability and tenant selection of 1033 Miller and captures the majority of the items that are in the lease as well that we would have wanted to have included. One of the other pieces that then won't be in the lease and will be a separate agreement would be an easement for the septic field. So given the lack of capacity in the Sun Cove sewer system, this development was always proposed to be serviced by a septic field on adjoining municipal land in a similar way to the Bland Health Center. Originally, this was contemplated to be at least referenced in the lease agreement, but instead will be wholly governed by a separate agreement modeled on the one we have with the Bland Health Center. And we'll be returning in January with that agreement. So out of the desire to make sure that this project stays on track and feasible, council recommendation is council to direct staff to enter into the revised lease agreement with the Lookout Society for 1033 Miller Road.
There's a little yellow highlighted section at 3.7 on, which I'm assuming is not intended to be. It says NTD and exemption from the payment of property taxes will still have to be obtained. I'm assuming that's not part of the agreement.
She's at a.
I don't know what you're on, page 14 and 44 again, in the report, I don't know the PDF yet.
Correct. That would just be a note and not part of the.
Yeah, so that's not.
Yeah.
Going to be in the agreement.
Correct.
Yeah. Okay. And have our lawyers looked at this?
Yes, so our lawyers reviewed the standard template, I guess in the early fall, and noted some things to note, and then reviewed again, sort of proceeding without those notes. So some of them were quite minor, but we, like the lease agreement refers to city consistently, and we wanted to refer to municipality.
So is that a problem if it refers to city rather than municipality?
And it's not a problem because it's sort of defined, it's a defined term, so it's like it means the local government. Just
Yeah.
Over to Councilor Getty first.
So I think that if an outside organization is having strict compliance to their template, and that's necessary for the project, that we go in strict compliance, get this funding. Easy.
Councilor Fast.
I'd be prepared to move the motion. Sounds pretty straightforward to me. New policies of the CMHC require a new lease template. Let's fill it in.
Okay, go ahead.
I recommend, the recommendation as written, that council direct staff to enter into the revised lease agreement with the Lookout Society for 1033 Miller Road.
Okay. By Councilor Fast, seconded by Councilor Morse. Any further discussion? Not seeing any, I'll call the question. All in favor, raise your hand, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. And that carries unanimously. Moving back to 8.2, Bowen Island Resilient Community Housing Partnership Agreement for Lot 1. Back over to our manager of planning and development.
Thank you, Madam Leonard. So following up from the delegation that you had at the start of the meeting, we got to talk about the exciting things I get to talk about. Municipal procedure and process. So by way of background, Birch had come to council in earlier in 2025, and the council direction at that point was to direct staff to work with Birch to draft an agreement to lease Lot 1. And gave some terms, so a 60 to 99-year lease nominal rate and a 5-year sunset clause, meaning essentially to reserve the land for their use for that 5-year period. So consistent then with that council direction, staff have worked with Birch to prepare an agreement to lease that would lay out an agreement for a 99-year lease, an agreement to enter into a lease with a 99-year timeline to cover area 1 of Lot 1, which is approximately 2 hectares in area. A nominal rate, so a $10 annual rate. The agreement to lease to be a 5-year term to provide Birch an opportunity to create development proposals, and that development plans would be based on the implementation plan that they've provided. And so Birch and New Commons Development today presented their sort of updated implementation plan, initial budget and plan. So the initial site work, including the site due diligence, market studies, the site and infrastructure planning, and the financials and phasing plan. And the other one we're talking about, so Housing Accelerator Fund. So the proposed project development costs would be eligible costs under our Housing Accelerator Fund grant as a component of the spending envisioned on affordable housing initiatives. And then I'll note too, so to meet requirements of the Housing Action Plan, BIM has committed to providing grant funding for affordable housing by the end of the half-year period, which would be January 30th, 2026. So staff are seeking that permission at this meeting to provide Birch with grant funding for affordable housing to fulfill the grant requirements. And so the recommendation would be that council authorize the mayor and CAO to sign the agreement to lease between the municipality and Birch that's included as attachment 1 to this report to set the parameters for a future lease of a 2-hectare portion of lot 1 to Birch for the construction of affordable housing. Thank you.
Thank you to the planner. I'll look to council for any questions. Councilor Morse. Councilor Wick.
So looking at background B, they were talking about maybe more than 50 units in their presentation today, so I don't know if that wording should maybe be 50 to 100 units or change to that. And then the other question, I guess, is there a map? Package that I got originally didn't have a map. Is there a map attached to the agreement? Or is it the whole implementation
Yeah.
plan is going to be an attachment,
Correct.
the whole thing? A big part that starts with purple, so blue and everything, or just
Yeah.
the map of the lease area?
No, the implementation plan is the Schedule A.
It's actually a part of the
Yeah.
agreement, okay. And then I guess my other just question is in 3.3. It talks about if Birch has not made satisfactory progress and in ensuring the imminent implementation, so what exactly does that mean?
So through the chair, so the agreement to lease is that it would reserve the land for 5 years. We had copied it on a similar agreement to lease that we had for 1033 Miller. But partly reflecting on the experience of this lease agreement and the amount of time taken to enter into it. Because that lease agreement was to lay out, like, once they had received final approval or something, I forget, it was much more restrictive language, like we would get final approval, then we would do the lease. And so Birch had come, one of their comments on the agreement to lease was that clause and saying this is causing problems for Lookout, knowing that we're not going to start work on the lease until usually final approval, and then suddenly we're up against, we're right up against the gun for this lease agreement, the amount of revisions. And so looking at, okay, if they have a plan that's in place, we could start work on a lease agreement.
Okay, and I guess my other question has to do with, I think this is also going to be advancing money to them. But where are we with the HAF funds? If, as far as our getting to keep the money because we've had enough building permits issued, and is this, if we gave them this money, but we haven't issued enough building permits by the time frame, then they're gonna claw back some money, and would we have enough money left in the kitty to claw back, to pay the clawback?
So we, in our agreement with them, we are provided payments. Sorry, I'm trying for the correct file. We're provided, I believe, with 4 payments that are made at the start of each contribution period. So we've received 2 to date and 2 are outstanding. Yes. So we've received the initial 2 amounts and we have 2 outstanding. And so the funding for this would fall within those first 2 amounts. So it's not based on future contributions from the HAF funding, that's based on like money received to date from the HAF funding.
And if we don't get enough building permits issued in the right time frame, then they just wouldn't pay the next 2. They wouldn't ask for any of the first 2 back.
Correct. The agreement's very clear that they're not clawing it back. They may withhold future funds. And I'll just say too, in terms of working with CMHC, they've been very clear that it's about, meeting our unit targets and meeting our housing action plan. Failure to do either of those may result in them saying that we're not meeting the terms of it. So far, we have been.
And then the term is 99 years. Yeah, but I think the one we did for 1033 Miller was 66 or something, a lesser number. So I'm just wondering why so much longer.
That was the council direction from.
Oh, okay. Fine. And then looking at 5.1B for Bob, I think they're asking for 150,000. And you've got 120,000 in the agreement.
Correct, that would have been an earlier number.
And then looking at D in that same section, whose approval will not be reasonably withheld. Isn't it usually unreasonably withheld? That's fine.
Councilor Vick.
I'm just wondering how we avoid situation we have with the lot 3 lease. Where basically we lose 6 months or 8 months or whatever because of the finagling around the funding organization. So it's are they planning to use CMHC for the funding?
Through the chart, I think that's undetermined. Like their goal right now is to come up with a development plan and lots and then look for funding for each of them. Like I know I've spoken to Birch about the BC Builds funding potential, but they also rely on you having building lots. And I'll just say with the 1033 lease, we're not yet at the point where their project has been delayed because of the lease, because they're sort of still been on track. They've allowed the building permit to be submitted based on that council direction, that it's still done work. Almost received their development permit, but it's still on track. It's just right up to the point of being delayed is causing everybody much more stress than it needed to have.
Any further questions for the planner before I look for a? Not seeing any, I'll look to council for a disposition on this, please.
It was given for the slight table correction.
I'll look to Mr. Martin to address that.
And maybe just the one is that if I could have just a motion to amend the budget amount in that 5.1B to 150. For the others, I think I can do this typos, but I just.
Yes, I'll motion to amend the budget amount in
section 5.1T of the agreement to lease
5.1B
to be 150,000.
to be 150,000.
I'll move.
I guess, seconded by Councilor Morse. Discussion on the amount to lease. Question, all in favor, raise your hand, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay, so the lease language has been considered amended, so a motion to authorize the mayor and CAO to sign the amended agreement for lease between Bowen Island Municipality and the Bowen Island Resilient Community Housing included in the top one of this report, with the rest of the motion as written in the agenda. Moved by Councilor Getty, seconded by Councilor Wake. Any further discussion? Councilor Saunders.
Oh, sorry. It's voting yes. My bad.
Not seeing any further discussion, I will call the question. All in favor, raise your hand, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. And that carries unanimously. Thank you, Mr. Martin. Thank you, Birch. 8.3, community grant aid recommendations. We have Kristen Watson, our CFO, joining us here today.
Thank you. Through the mayor to the rest of the council. I'm here to report today that the community grants jury panel met again in November, on the 28th of the month.
in order to adjudicate 4 grant applications that were received. We received one from Seniors Keeping Young for $3,000 in order to support venue rental costs to put on 10 speaker presentations. We received $2,000 grant request from Light Up Bowen to support with the annual event. We received a grant request of $1,400 from the Bowen Island Horse Owners and Riders Association to help with replacing the roof on the shed at the riding ring in Griffin Park. And lastly, we received a request for $650 from the Hearth, which is going to be used to purchase materials to display Ron Woodall cartoons in the community center here, upcoming in the spring of 2026. The Community Grants Committee is recommending all grants be approved in full, and the can also attest to the fact that the grant applications align with the community grants. So if there's any questions on that, I can take those from council now.
Over to you, Council Past.
Thank you. Just confirming, I think you mentioned the grants committee, but is this not the first of the jury panel? Just check.
No, there was a jury panel that sat in May of this year in June. After the May budget in the spring, in order to adjudicate the first round of grants. There was funds remaining after that process, and there was a decision to convene a second round in the fall for smaller grant amounts. We like to limit them to $3,000 or less.
Thank you.
Councilor Getty.
So does this, are these 4 grants in empty the pot? So to speak?
There's still, I think, about $5,000 left.
And secondly, the materials to help display the cartoons, is that, are they permanent? They're gonna be part of a permanent collection, or?
I don't believe so. I believe they belong to the family.
See any further discussion? To look to council for a motion, please. Councilor Getty.
Recommend that council award the following grants: Light Up Bowen 2,000, Seniors Keeping Young 3,000, Bowen Island Horse Owners and Riders Association 1,400, and the Hearth 650.
Seconded by Councilor Saunders. Any further discussion? Not seeing any. I'll call the question. All in favor, raise your hand, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. And that carries unanimously. Thank you, Ms. Watson. Moving on to 11.1, update to council on Metro Vancouver business. There was a Metro report meeting held last Friday. The big item on the agenda is feedback on some of the governance review processes, but nothing cited as yet. We'll see some pieces come up in early 2026. There is a governance tracker, I believe, now on this website that deals with some of the implementation, like green, yellow, red light of how things are going over there. I'll turn it over to our Islands trustee, starting Trustee Getty, who's in the room with us here.
All right, so there was one full day, I think, talking about the budget. And this was after we had received the CAO's operational report. And it had recommended 3 fairly major grants, and I think another minor one that had some repercussions. So they were voting on each line of the budget, the whole council. And quite a lot of, and I think there's a difference of opinion between myself and Trustee Fast with respect to both the recommendations and the process and the results. So at this point, we went into the meeting without the addition of the CAO's report. I think it's 24% increase, and we walked out of it with a 30-something% increase. So there's still 2 more meetings, and there's maybe a full meeting where we have to try and sort through some of this. So it's the percentage sounds large and dramatic, and the actual number doesn't work out to be all that wildly dramatic, but it's still an issue, I think, for Poland to have to deal with, so we have to get into some details and talk it through and get some feedback. It was a wild and long.
Okay. And over to you, Councillor Fat or Trustee Fast.
Thank you. Yeah, municipal trustee is how they call us at the Trust Council. Yeah, thanks for that. I actually have the budget number at 38% increase currently, and it's a concern. So Judy and I both being on the Financial Planning Committee, I'm sure we'll be doing what we can. But the reason was the operational review by the new the CAO, who's just been with the organization for 1 year, had 9 recommendations. Some of them similar to ones that this council has adopted, like improve committee structure and not start any new projects in the coming year. But some of the other ones, like create a manager of Indigenous relations, some of these, a position. Some of these are because the Islands Trust has over 30 nations in it, and the new Provincial Declaration Act makes it so that we need to be consulting with them and being organized about that consulting. And I'm happy to read the 9 out or point anybody to it if you like, those recommendations, but it's to maintain the sustainability of the organization. It's not big new spending. It's reacting to what the CAO sees in the staff and the resources of the organization that need to be held up. And the other things in the meeting, you might be interested to know that we had some excellent speakers. We had Guy Brody from the Island Community Economic Trust, formerly known as ICE-T, but now with visual logos with feathers and paddles and beautiful co-governance models, and a nice model of sustainability, including environment and economy, that I'll share with the group if you are interested. I'll send it around anyway. There was a Hannah Rabinovich from the BC Housing Association was there to talk about short-term rental act changes in terms of opting in to the principal residence requirements. And last but not least, we had the San Juan County joint session where we've got a partnership with them across the border. And some of their issues sound very familiar to ours, from oil spills to, oh, I forget what the second one is, something about visitors, I think, to the ferries. So they're interested in joining the, or at least knowing more about the group that Bowen Island Municipality, through our activist mayor, has brought together, and seeing if there's some potential for working together there across county lines, even, or international border lines, I should say, even if it's just studies and examples. They've got a couple of private operators who've stepped into the passenger ferry side of things. And of course, we've got Hullo ferries. They hadn't heard about that. And it sounds like the Washington State ferry system is in way worse condition than the BC Ferries fleet in terms of missing service. And anyway, so there was enthusiasm there. And I had one more thing. Oh yes, and the other guest was MP Elizabeth May, joined us for dinner. I had a good conversation with her. And so you'll also see in the information part of the agenda, 12.1, 12.2, and 12.9 all relate to these things. And let me know if you want more info. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any questions for our municipal trustees? Not seeing any. With that, I'll move us on to the end of our agenda. A motion to adjourn, please. Moved by Councilor Getty, second by Councilor Saunders. All in favor, raise your hand, say aye.